Chapter 320. Yu Yuan originally had no idea how to refine spirit energy and refine the Dantian in the Golden Hall realm. But when he actually started to do it, he realized that many times it was just a matter of course. From the beginning, he had used the Nine Lights Heaven Wheel as his foundation. When he had successfully reached the Golden Hall realm and was finally about to reveal his talent, it was this wondrous technique that led him. Within the small world inside his Dantian, 9 brilliant balls of light hung high like the sun. The balls of light spun and flew, condensing into a brilliant belt of light that overflowed with light. Once the belt of light was formed, it began to absorb the surrounding misty spirit energy. Once the spirit energy entered the brilliant belt of light, a change occurred again. Yu Yuan's mind, under the state of wisdom eye, could clearly see that the brilliant belt of light was spinning like an enormous millstone. Every time it spun, the spirit energy that entered it would be refined by a bit. The true profundity of the Nine Lights Heaven Wheel was thus revealed. It was as if the 9 suns were working together to push the wheel, absorbing the relatively thin spirit energy. Through the rotation of the wheel of light, it condensed the spirit energy to become even purer. At this moment, the entire Golden Hall microworld seemed to be divided into 2 parts. The wheel of light formed by the suns in midair absorbed the thin spirit energy from all directions. After the millstone-like wheel of light rotated and condensed, it caused the new pure spirit energy to sink downward. If one took a closer look, they would find that the shining wheel pushed by the 9 suns was like a giant well that was constantly rotating. The mouth of the enormous well swallowed the thin spirit energy. The enormous well was like a millstone that rotated and condensed, going down circle after circle. In the end, the refined spirit energy flowed out from the bottom of the well. The spirit energy that flowed into the mouth of the well was originally very thin, but after being condensed by the Nine Lights Heaven Wheel, the spirit energy that flowed out from the bottom of the well was much more condensed and condensed. The refined spirit energy gathered in the lower part of the Golden Hall microworld. It was clearly separated from the spirit energy of the past and did not tolerate each other. The spirit energy that had not been purified and refined flew up in spirals. When it reached the top, it was swallowed by the enormous well formed by the Nine Lights Heaven Wheel and refined once more. Time passed by unknowingly. Yu Yuan, who was immersed in his thoughts, quickly discovered that the Golden Court microcosm, which was originally overflowing with spirit energy, had all been refined by the Nine Lights Heaven Wheel. Below the small world, the refined spiritual chi only occupied a very small space. Perhaps it only accounted for 1/10 of the area below. Yu Yuan felt his soul tremble slightly. At this moment, he understood a fact. After being purified and refined by the Nine Lights Heavenly Wheel, the spirit energy that originally filled the Golden Hall microcosm had shrunk by 10 times. Therefore, it only took up 1/10 of the space. While his mind trembled, he suddenly saw another surge of spiritual energy pouring into his body. He instantly realized that it was probably due to the lack of new spiritual chi. Seeing that there was no way to continue tempering it, the outside world poured more spiritual chi into it. Even though he was focused on cultivation, he could still feel the unbearable heat in his arm. He didn't dare think too much, and he still immersed his mind within the Golden Hall microworld as he continued and urgently cultivated, and he swallowed the spirit energy that surged in like an enormous whale sucking in water. Very quickly, the spirit energy that surged in once again filled his Dantian. The new spiritual chi and the purified spiritual chi didn't interfere with each other. The Nine Lights Heaven Wheel, on the other hand, was spinning and operating like a giant well. The mouth of the well swallowed the newly poured spirit energy, and after it was refined, it escaped from the bottom of the well into the refined spirit energy. After an unknown period of time, the second infusion of spirit energy was completely refined again. Below, the purified and cleansed spiritual energy took up an additional space. Thus, under Yu Yuan's diligent cultivation, he once again poured in a third wave. The vast and mighty spirit energy once again filled the golden court dantian. He once again went to wash and purify it, and just like that, he repeated the process over and over again. Yu Yuan, who had forgotten the passage of time, looked at the golden court microworld. The space below was filled with more and more refined spirit energy. Just like that, it seemed like a long time had passed, but it also seemed like only a short while. Under the effect of the 9 lights heaven wheel, the condensed spirit energy completely filled the space below. An extremely shocking change was about to take place. The boundary of the inner golden court microworld, which originally had a limit and could be sensed to the end, was forcefully opened by the overflowing refined spirit energy. If the golden court microworld below was a pond, then the spirit energy that was poured in after being purified by the 9 lights heaven wheel was the pond water. When the pond water completely filled the pond, and then the pond water flowed in from the sky, the pond water actually didn't overflow. It was actually the pond that had expanded. This discovery allowed Yu Yuan to clearly see what the so-called Golden Hall realm, the so-called opening of the Golden Hall realm after birth, was all about. The size of the Golden Court microworld for every cultivator was determined by birth. When one cultivated to the Golden Hall realm and opened the lower dantian, one would be able to see the vastness of the Golden Court and determine one's talent first. The opening of the Golden Court microworld after birth could only be attempted at the middle stage of the Golden Hall realm. This was the second transformation of the Golden Court microworld. Originally, Yu Yuan didn't know what the second transformation of the Golden Court microworld and the opening of the Golden Court microworld would be like. Now he finally understood that only after refining spirit energy, the surplus refined spirit energy after the completion of the first refinement would naturally transform into a wondrous energy that would allow the pond of the Golden Court microworld to expand and extend outwards on its own. After understanding this, he continued to cultivate. New spirit energy was poured in continuously, and after being purified by the 9 lights heaven wheel, it poured into the space below and opened up the Golden Court microworld. The Golden Court microworld was like an inflated balloon, constantly expanding. After a while, the first round of refinement seemed to have finally ended. The internal microworld wouldn't expand in the slightest. He, who had cultivated for an unknown period of time, suddenly woke up in a daze. The strange white mist that had been shrouding him all this time also disappeared in an instant. It was as if he had returned to reality in an instant. Gazes of astonishment and inquiry landed on him one after another. Feeling the burning sensation in his arm, he ignored the people around him and raised his head to look at the sky. The night sky was filled with dazzling stars. Shin Feiqing and the Soul Travel Grand cultivators of the Lightning Element sect and the Frigid Een sect were nowhere to be seen. "How long have I been cultivating?" he asked, looking confused. "It's only about an hour," Yang Inquan from the Taiyuan sect said with a smile, his eyes glittering. "Kid from the Yu clan, how many refinements have you made of your Golden Court microworld?" Upon hearing these words, everyone's spirits were lifted. "Just the first refinement," Yu Yuan answered honestly. Yang Inquan seemed somewhat disappointed. "You've only made the first refinement. I can't see anything yet. What's going on?" Yu Yuan ignored him and looked at Yuan Lianyao. "Where's the Major General of the Black Fiend Army? Where are the 2 from the Lightning Element sect and the Frigid Een sect? The 2 Soul Travel Grand cultivators of the Lightning Element sect and the Frigid Een sect are probably dead," Yuan Lianyao said. Just as Yu Yuan was about to ask for more details, he suddenly heard a soul message from the depths of the lake. "Let's get rid of them and search for the arcane realms in the depths of the abandoned lands." Chapter 321. Boom. A loud rumble echoed out from the small island at the center of the lake. The island that was embedded in the lake suddenly rose into the air. It was as if the island had been forcibly pulled out of the lake and floated over everyone's heads. The bottom of the floating island was covered in snow-white rock. Silver dragon tendons that were as thick as a baby's arm could be seen coiling around the island to prevent it from breaking apart. The aura emanating from the silver dragon tendons was none other than that of the 7th grade silver frost azure dragon. The entire island seemed to be soaked in dragon blood, which was used to strengthen the soil. The island was wreathed in thick miasma and smoke. Yang Inquan from the Taiyuan sect and a few other experts with profound soul awareness looked up at the floating island, their expressions flickering. This island was the place where Shin Feiqing had first arrived. Why had the island at the center of the lake reacted so strangely after that Major General had left? Yang Inquan also sensed that the floating island was emanating a terrifying might that suffocated his 3 spiritual souls. Yu Yuan looked up at the floating island. Yu Zhu, the white-robed Grand Master, and Su Zishi, who were all connected to his heart lake, were also there. The 3 of them would summon him from time to time, asking him to come to them as soon as possible. In fact, Yu Zhu had been refining this floating island ever since she had returned from the forbidden land of the fallen moons. All kinds of energies that contained deadly toxins had fused into the desolation abandoned land and turned it into Yushu's personal territory. After receiving the blessing of Bai Shuang's 7th grade dragon flesh, blood, and tendons, this island had gone through a major transformation, allowing it to travel in the air. Compared to the Star Moon sect's meteor eye, which had been refined by the Star Moon sect for decades, this floating island was far inferior. However, it had already taken the shape of a wondrous spiritual tool. If it was refined by Yu Zhu with the immense spiritual power of the desolate forgotten land, it would be a heaven-grade spiritual tool sooner or later. "There's someone up there," Bai Shang, who didn't have much of a presence, suddenly said. A cluster of smoke drifted down from the sky. Fizzing sounds came from within the dark green smoke, and it emanated a terrifying aura that could even melt a person's soul awareness. The smoke drifted down towards the place where Yu Yuan was standing. Yang Inquan, Su Xiangtian, and the others sensed that something was wrong and immediately stepped aside. Yuan Lianyao's expression changed slightly, and her shoulders suddenly sank, and the burning red lotus flowers beneath her feet were about to crash into the smoke cloud. Suddenly, a hand gently rested on the back of her white and warm hand. "What are you doing?" She glared at him. The others were also looking at Yu Yuan at this moment. Yu Yuan, who was pressing on the back of her hand, had a smile on his face. His posture was calm and relaxed as he shook his head and said, "City Lord Sis, I don't need you to protect me." At that moment, Liu Chan was the first to react. He snorted coldly and said, "They're here to pick you up, right?" All of a sudden, everyone's eyes were filled with surprise. A floating island, a descending cloud of smoke, had come to pick him up? What kind of charm does this kid from the Dark Moon City, who is acting strangely and judging the battle situation, have? Under everyone's incredulous gazes, that cluster of dark green smoke stopped steadily on the ground in front of Yu Yuan. Taking a step forward, Yu Yuan's silhouette flickered. The dark green smoke cloud, like a lotus platform made of green jade, lifted him up and brought him to the floating island. Everyone who gathered around Yu Yuan was a little dazed, as if they couldn't believe their eyes. They couldn't believe that a little young master of the Dark Moon City could have such an honor. No matter who was on the island, they must be a big shot, perhaps someone who could decide the overall situation of the barren, abandoned land. Why would such a person value Yu Yuan so much? Soon, under the guidance of the dark green cloud, Yu Yuan entered the island shrouded in mist. The island, which was at the center of the lake, flew away without any rumbling of the activation of the formation. Judging from the direction, it should be the deepest part of the barren, abandoned land. Yuan Lianyao rubbed her smooth forehead with her fingers, looking a little speechless. "Don't you understand?" Liu Chan's expression turned cold again, and his tone was cold. The commander of the Divine Might Empire and the black and white boy who was with him in the Fallen Moon Forbidden Land are clearly in cahoots. There are other experts hiding on the floating island. Yu Yuan is one of them. Her last sentence revealed her guess, which was also a fact that everyone could see. Inside the wind cloud sail, the old general of the Silver Moon Empire was also shocked. His expression changed unpredictably as he watched the floating island of unknown origin gradually move towards the barren, abandoned land. Fan Yin, who came from the Fan clan of the Empire, had a dark look in his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Many members of the small clans watched the island leave with bitter smiles on their faces. What kind of background does a little young master of the Dark Moon City have? Is it worth it for such a big shot to pick him up and take him away? Was it really wise to become enemies with the Yu clan? Under the moonlight, Lu Ying's eyes sparkled like stars. Lu Ying was also stunned. She rubbed her eyes, which were glittering as she stared at the mirror-like stone under her feet, and muttered, "Why is that island floating? Why is the aura on the island so shocking?" She kept adjusting the angle, but her starry eyes couldn't see through the smoke that curled around the island. This was extremely rare. In the barren abandoned land, Wei Wujiang, Wang Jinlin, and a few young nobles of the Divine Might Empire stared blankly at the sky. The spatial rifts that were moving unpredictably had all returned to Shen Feiqing after she had soared into the sky and chosen to fight the two soul travel grand cultivators to the death. Therefore, Wei Wujiang and the others were spared. Li Baixiong and the other sergeants of the Black Fiend army had gone all out to chase after the people of the Dragon Concealment Lake, the Lightning Sect, and the Frigid Een Sect. After coming back to life, they didn't dare to approach the lake again, and instead hid far away. In the dark, they waited for the people of their sects to arrive. Before the seniors of their sects arrived, they witnessed Jiang Moyan's death and Zhou Jin's escape. Then, they saw the flying of the island in the center of the lake, and Yu Yuan, who was carried away by the dark green smoke. The series of changes made the two dumbfounded, and they started to doubt life. The moon was bright, and the stars were bright. On the floating island, Zhou Tsangmin, dressed in white, looked at Yu Yuan with a smile and said, "After this great change, if you continue to stay in the Silver Moon Empire, I'm afraid even the Empress will be alarmed. You're in the limelight too much. Have you thought about leaving and cultivating in another place?" Yu Yuan couldn't help but laugh. "Do you want to recruit me to the Red Devil School, Lord Grand Preceptor?" Zhou Tsangmin smiled casually. "Even though it's not on par with the Devil's Palace and the Goblin Temple, the Red Devil School is indeed one of the best in this Howren world. Most importantly, I have a say in the Red Devil School." He didn't try to hide his admiration for Yu Yuan. "The Red Devil School is definitely an excellent choice," Su Zishi said with good intentions. "You should really think about it." "Let's talk about this later," Yu Yuan said casually. Then, with a smile, he looked at Yu Zhu, who was jumping up and down on the island. "She has been refining this island for a long time. She has secretly refined many rare items from the barren abandoned into it." Zhou Tsangmin's face grew serious as he said, "This island will become the most unique treasure in the barren abandoned land. She has a great affinity with the great Tao of the barren abandoned land. The many materials she has found to make up for the missing items on this island will all be of great use." Su Zishi nodded slightly. "Very extraordinary." Yu Yuan's eyes lit up. In fact, this was the reason why he had brought Yu Zhu here from the Jade Peak mountain range. He wanted to expand his territory in the barren abandoned land with the help of Yu Zhu's wonders. However, before he could plant the medicinal plants he had envisioned, he had encountered this great change in the arcane realm, which had changed many things. However, after seeing Yu Zhu in high spirits, he knew that this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. "Is there really an arcane realm?" he suddenly asked. Zhou Tsangmin frowned. "We don't know yet. Your friend and Xin Feiqing have already besieged Zhoujin. Let's not go to the arcane realm now. We'll go somewhere else first. Then where are we going? Yu Yuan asked curiously. To the Spirit Void sect, where the teleportation portal is. Let's stop it first. Chapter 322. In the depths of the barren, abandoned grounds. In the middle of the mountain range, there was a large and majestic array formation in the night sky. The strange formation was in the shape of a square, supported by 4 thick and wide marble pillars. Under the moonlight, the array shone with a sparkling luster. The luster caused the surrounding space to tremble. Near the array, there were rows of small wooden houses. More than a dozen Spirit Void sect disciples were meditating on cushions in the wooden houses. They held spirit stones in their hands and absorbed the spirit chi in them to cultivate. In front of the array, there was a compass that was connected to the array to determine the direction and target. A middle-aged man in a black robe and a feathered crown was sitting on top of the compass and talking to a few people beside him. He was at the middle stage of the Yin spirit realm. There were cultivators from the Lightning sect, the Chilling Yin sect, and other sections. Brother Fan, is there really a secret realm here? A female cultivator from the Cloud Water sect asked with a smile. She was wearing a colorful robe that seemed to have a trickle of water on it. This woman had just entered the Yin spirit realm, and her behavior was rather frivolous. When she spoke, she even blew at the man with the feathered crown from the Spirit Void sect. Fan he glanced at her and said uninterestedly, "You should ask the people from the Ancient Baron sect." The Ancient Baron sect didn't send anyone to the barren, abandoned grounds. The woman from the Cloud Water sect called Wang Yuan sighed. This is the strange part. Everyone said that Xin Feiqing's master found the secret realm in the barren, abandoned grounds. Why didn't anyone from the Ancient Baron sect come? The others also had doubts in their hearts. The 7 lower sects, the Spirit Void sect, the Stellar Luna sect, the Lightning sect, the Chilling Yin sect, the Taiyuan sect, and the Cloud Water sect, more or less sent their disciples and elders here. However, the Ancient Baron sect, which should have been the most active, didn't send anyone. And Xin Feiqing was an abandoned disciple of the Ancient Baron sect. Shouldn't she be killed by the Ancient Baron sect? Xin Feiqing's master only disappeared in the sky. No one can prove that he is dead. Fan he frowned and looked at the teleportation array that the Spirit Void sect had spent a lot of effort to build. He said, the Ancient Baron sect probably still cares about his existence, so they only said that Xin Feiqing is an abandoned disciple and not a traitor. As soon as these words came out, those people all had thoughtful expressions. That person had once been extremely famous in the Tianyuan continent. Before he had fled to outer space, he had been locked in a bitter dispute with the current sect master of the ancient Desolate sect. After losing the competition, he flew far away in a fit of anger and never returned. This was a heavy blow to the ancient Desolate sect. Originally, if he was still in the ancient Desolate sect, if he was still alive, the ancient Desolate sect might be able to squeeze their way up from the bottom of the 7 great inferior sects. The Cloud Water sect, which was ranked ahead of the ancient Desolate sect, was even prepared to be surpassed by the ancient Desolate sect. The fight between him and the current sect master had caused the ancient Desolate sect to suffer a great loss. When he had headed to the outer world, he had brought along a few experts from the sect. However, none of them had been able to return. Xin Feiqing, the direct disciple he doted on and valued the most, didn't have the right to go to the Starry River because her cultivation base wasn't high enough. That person was viewed by the ancient Baron sect as a traitor who had split the sect apart. Xin Feiqing was his direct disciple. If his death was confirmed and his soul truly scattered, Xin Feiqing would not just be expelled. Is that person really as scary as the rumors say? The Cloud Water sect woman muttered. Fan he snorted coldly and said, Our Spirit Void sect views him as a strong opponent. Your cloud water sect should be glad that he never returned. Otherwise, the ancient desolate sect would definitely surpass you. After saying this, he no longer paid any attention to this cloud water sect woman, who had a bad reputation. Instead, he lowered his head and fiddled with a jade tablet. He said softly, "Strange. Why is there no news from Jinlin's side?" Wang Jinlin had a jade tablet that was exactly the same as the one in his hand. The two jade tablets could communicate and send messages within 5,000 kilometers. However, for some reason, the last time Wang Jinlin sent a message, he only said that he went to a strange island in the middle of a lake and saw Shen Feiqing land on it. After that, there was no more news. Fan he asked many times, but Wang Jinlin didn't reply. This made him gradually feel uneasy. He knew that Wang Jinlin was the successor of Venerable Skysoar. Venerable Skysoar, who was a young spirit realm cultivator, knew that he had no hope of having children. Therefore, he raised Wang Jinlin as his son. In the barren forgotten land, Fan he was only a supervisor, helping Venerable Skysoar keep an eye on the teleportation formation. The one who could make decisions was actually Wang Jinlin. Venerable Skysoar thought that no one in the Silver Moon Empire or the Divine Might Empire would dare to do anything to Wang Jinlin in the barren forgotten land. Therefore, he arranged for Fan He to come. Nothing must happen, or else, looking at the motionless jade tablet, Fan He felt increasingly uneasy. He was afraid that something would happen to Wang Jinlin and anger Venerable Skysoar. Venerable Skysoar, who was notorious even in the sect, would come out of seclusion and come here personally. There's a floating island. Suddenly, someone exclaimed. Fan He woke up from his thoughts and hurried to take a look. He immediately saw a floating island under the moonlight. That island emitted a familiar dragon aura. Squinting, Fan He could vaguely see silvery white dragon tendons and drops of dragon blood in the soil. By Shuang's flesh and blood. Fan He's expression suddenly changed. He suddenly exclaimed, warning everyone to be careful. Upon hearing his words, all of the cultivators from the 7 great sects who had gathered around the teleportation portal panicked. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Suddenly, a thick, 7-colored miasma cloud flew out of the island and attacked them. Unusually turbulent blood chi waves came from the depths of the 7-colored miasma. 7 giant pythons could be seen in the miasma, staring at them with cold, murderous eyes. The moment Fan He saw the 7 giant pythons, his expression changed again. He shouted, "Python Queen Suzishi!" As a cultivator of the Spirit Void sect guarding the teleportation formation in the barren forgotten land, he had a deep understanding of the cultivators of the Divine Might Empire and the Silver Moon Empire. Python Queen Suzishi was someone he paid close attention to. She had left a deep impression on him. However, wasn't this Python Queen with Wei Wujiang in the Gilded Treasure Ship not long ago? Why was Suzishi here? Before he could figure it out, the miasma and the 7 sinister-looking giant pythons had already swooped down. At the same time, the floating island also flew into the teleportation formation. Yan Qiling's figure suddenly emerged from a spatial rift that had been torn open. He smiled at Yu Yuan, who was on the island, and suddenly turned into a streak of black light that flew into the teleportation formation that the Spirit Void sect had spent a great deal of money to build, which was supported by 4 enormous stone pillars. The square formation was made of jade, and there were dense and complicated interweaving rays of light. The rays of light released streams of golden light that flowed like golden water. As soon as Yan Qiling turned into a streak of black light and entered it, the interweaving rays of golden light were instantly dyed black and changed the direction of their flow. Given his attainments in spatial power, it's naturally impossible for him to build a teleportation formation. The white-robed state preceptor explained to Yu Yuan on the island with a smile. However, if he just wants to destroy it and make it unable to operate freely for a short period of time, he can still do it. Suzishi said, We're here so that he won't be disturbed when he destroys the teleportation formation." Zhou Tsangmin laughed softly. In the next moment, his terrifying soul will, which covered the sky and covered the earth, descended from the island like thousands of sharp blades. Puff, puff, puff. All the cultivators gathered here, including Fan He, felt their souls explode. Chapter 323. Everyone from the 7 lesser sects, regardless of their cultivation or status, had their souls destroyed. The imperial preceptor of the Scarlet Sun Empire descended from the sky. His terrifying soul remembrance was like thousands of flaming spears. Yu Yuan, who cultivated the extreme wisdom soul-tempering art and was extremely sensitive to heavenly souls, could also sense it. He could sense that the cultivators' souls were being destroyed. In an extremely short period of time. Yu Yuan, who was standing on the floating island, looked down and couldn't see a single living person. They had all been killed by Zhou Tsangmin's white-robed Yin god, who was far more skilled than he was with his soul will. Yu Yuan took a deep breath and looked at the imperial tutor in white, who was smiling confidently with a hint of seriousness in her heart. The imperial advisor's fame was spread between the Scarlet Sun Empire and the Silver Moon Empire. All the cultivators of the Silver Moon Empire saw him as a great threat. Yu Yuan had known him for a long time. He only felt that he was intelligent, but he hadn't seen him display any powerful combat strength. Originally, Yu Yuan had some doubts about his strength and ruthlessness. But now he didn't have any doubts. As expected of the Red Devil School, a terrifying existence known as the Devil Seed. The gentleness and elegance this person usually showed was only on the surface. As a powerhouse of the Devil Dao, Zhou Tsangmin didn't disappoint him when it was time to act. This kind of decisive and ruthless killing method was in line with the identity of the Red Devil School's Devil Seed. Many fiery holes had been dug into the hard ground of the abandoned land around the teleportation formation. With a quick glance, Yu Yuan realized that Zhou Tsangmin's soul awareness, which contained blazing flame power, had penetrated into the depths of the earth after killing 3 of the cultivators from the 7 great sections. Python Queen Su Zishi and Yu-Tu worked together to form a miasma cloud. The 7 giant pythons didn't do anything at all. They only confused Fan He and the other cultivators, making them focus on the 7 pythons and the billowing poisonous smoke. They ignored the true soul-killing move descending from the sky. You are still as vicious as ever. You don't leave any leeway. Su Zishi looked at the corpses on the ground and rolled her eyes at Zhou Tsangmin. She grumbled. If the people from the 7 great sects find out that you're messing around like this, they might start a slaughter between them and the Red Devil School. Zhou Tsangmin said carelessly, "No one will know." While the 2 of them were talking, Yu Yuan's gaze once again landed on the teleportation portal. Yan Qiling, who had transformed into a streak of black light, was still moving about inside the dense network of teleportation portals, causing the teleportation portal's network of spatial spell formations to become extremely congested. "Why not destroy it?" Yu Yuan asked. As soon as he said this, Zhou Tsangmin and Su Zishi were both stunned. Su Zishi said, "Such a teleportation formation, which used up countless manpower and material resources of the Spirit Void sect, is as solid as a boulder. It is not easy to destroy it. If it weren't for your friend's mastery of spatial power and his own uniqueness, it would be difficult to even destroy it and temporarily stop it from operating. The teleportation portal in front of us was only successfully built with the help of a Sun Spirit and a Freedom Realm cultivator," Zhou Tsangmin interrupted. "Changing the network of spell formations is also because of your friend's uniqueness. If we want to destroy this formation, I'm afraid it will require the combined efforts of several Freedom Realm cultivators. Unless all the experts of the Red Devil School come out and pour in together, there is no other way." Zhou Tsangmin smiled faintly. "Our goal is only the complete mystic realm. Destroying such a huge teleportation portal is not within the scope of our abilities. If we really do that, the Spirit Void sect and the Red Devil School will immediately fight to the death. Even if they find out that we killed a few of their cultivators, it won't lead to a battle to the death between the two sections. He didn't go into detail, but Yu Yuan understood. He knew that compared to a teleportation portal, the lives of Fan He and the others were actually not that important. A moment later, Yan Qiling transformed into a streak of black light and flew out of the teleportation portal. Yan Qiling reappeared and landed on the floating island. He said, "The people of the Spirit Void sect know that there is a problem with this teleportation portal. It will take a long time to repair it. We have enough time to move around the wasteland and search for the mystic realm buried deep in the ground." Zhou Tsangmin nodded and glanced at Yu Zhu. Yu Zhu understood tacitly. The miasma and smoke that had flown away from the island quickly gathered. After a period of stagnation, the island once again flew silently through the void. Yu Yuan immediately knew that Yu Zhu should know the most accurate location of the restriction that Shen Feiqing had triggered. Yan Qiling had many miraculous abilities. He could make the teleportation portal of the Spirit Void sect stop working. Yu Zhu, on the other hand, was compatible with the great Tao of the wasteland, and could sense the subtle changes in every corner. Zhou Tsangmin and Su Zixi found him, and received help from Yan Qiling and Yu Zhu. It was much more convenient for them to do things in this heaven and earth. In the distant sky, a streak of dazzling icy light flew away in a flash. Zhou Tsangmin frowned and said, "I can't believe Feiqing failed." Su Zixi pondered for a moment and said, "That guy from the Frigid Dark sect must have some life-saving treasure. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escape from Feiqing in that state. Will something unexpected happen?" The white-robed state preceptor hesitated for a few seconds. He glanced at Yan Qiling and said, "Mr. Yan, can you help me? You want to kill Zojin?" Yan Qiling asked. "My Yin soul isn't bound by flesh and blood. It can come and go like a bolt of lightning. You just need to open a spatial passage that can reach Zojin, and I'll be able to stop him." Zhou Tsangmin said confidently. "You're just a Yin soul," Yan Qiling said solemnly. "That Zojin is also in the soul wander realm like you." The white-robed state preceptor smiled casually. "My true body is about to condense a Yang soul. Although we're both in the soul wander realm, there are many things that are different." Yan Qiling thought for a while and expressed his admiration. He nodded and said, "Good." A beam of white light shot out from the gap between his closed palms, causing the space around him to vibrate intensely. The beam of light was long and narrow, as if it could cut through space. Down below, the teleportation portal that he had tampered with shook violently. "I'll go first." The white-robed state preceptor chuckled and shrank into a beam of light that shot forward in parallel with the beam of light. At a certain moment, the two beams of light suddenly merged into one. Then, they vanished in a flash. "Mr. Yan, you seem to have gained a lot from the teleportation portal in the Spirit Void sect." Looking at Yan Qiling, who had opened his palms and transformed into a beam of white light that disappeared, Su Zixi said, "Aren't you afraid that the Spirit Void sect will find out that you've taken the power hidden in the teleportation portal in the Spirit Void sect?" "I wouldn't have come to the desolate Forsaken Lands if I were," Yan Qiling said. "Mr. Yan, if you don't mind my asking, what was your name when you were in the Forbidden Land of the Falling Moons?" Eyes narrowed, Su Zixi asked with great interest, "I know a lot about the other souls that were imprisoned in the Forbidden Land of the Falling Moons. However, I've never heard of anyone like you, nor have I ever seen anyone like you." Yan Qiling's face grew cold as he said, "No comment." Su Zixi smiled. "I'm just curious. Please don't mind me, Mr. Yan." At that moment, Yu Yuan saw Yu Tu, who was standing beside him, with a strange light flowing in her eyes. A wisp of her soul will flew into Yu Yuan's heart. Yu Yuan instantly learned that the genius from the Star Luna sect, who was controlling the falling stars, had also discovered the location of the restrictive spell by relying on the wonders of the falling stars. Furthermore, he had arrived before them. Should we kill Lu Ying as well? Yan Qiling asked all of a sudden. No! Su Zixi said hastily. Yan Qiling ignored her and fixed his eyes on Yu Yuan. Keep her alive. Chapter 324. The falling star eye, which was floating in the air, looked like a silver-white mountain peak, completely still. Underneath it was a dilapidated city. Dilapidated fences and dilapidated walls were scattered all over the ground. In a corner of the unknown city, the solid ground cracked open, revealing a huge hole. The hole wasn't very deep, and only a large skull could be seen in it. It seemed to be made of platinum, and emanated a sparkling luster under the moonlight and starlight. The skull only had one eye socket, and a brown eyeball the size of a fist could be seen in it. It was a skull with two curved horns. One look and one could tell that it wasn't a human. A cyan and black scabbard that was wrapped in shark skin pierced into the center of the skull like a long nail. Light could be seen swirling around the mouth of the scabbard, along with sword intent. Lu Ying from the Star Luna sect stood next to the crater. She stared curiously at the crater in the city and the scabbard on the skull with a blank expression on her face. The sword intent within the cyan and black scabbard triggered her falling star eye. If it weren't for the sword intent, she wouldn't have been able to see the hole in this inconspicuous, dilapidated city in this corner of the desolate land. Gazing at the scabbard, she somehow felt a sense of familiarity, as if the sword intent within it had some kind of profound connection with her falling star eye. Lu Ying couldn't help but think of the origin of the falling star eye. This unique treasure, which had been refined by a senior from the Star Moon sect for decades and countless years, had originally come from a relatively well-preserved meteor in the Forbidden Land of the Falling Moon sect. It was said that the meteors in the Forbidden Land of the Falling Moon sect were moons in the Starry River. A powerful expert had created the Forbidden Land of the Falling Moon sect after severing the moon. The falling star eye, which had been given to her by the Star Moon sect, had become the precious treasure she cultivated with her life, and carried the immortal sword intent of that man. Instead of saying that the scabbard had attracted her attention, it was more accurate to say that it had attracted the attention of the sword intent within the falling star eye. Lu Ying, who had landed by herself, had left the falling star eye in the sky because she was afraid. She was afraid of the sword intent within the scabbard that had yet to be unleashed, which she felt very familiar with. Lu Ying. Yu Yuan's voice came so suddenly that she didn't even notice it. However, when Yu Yuan suddenly landed and stood right next to her, bright starlight suddenly flashed in the depths of her bright eyes. You! Shocked, she looked at Yu Yuan's arms and sensed the sword intent they contained. The ancient, boundless and vast sword intent was exactly the same. No wonder I had a good impression of you when I first saw you, and we talked all night without getting tired. Yu Yuan smiled and pointed at the falling star eye above his head, saying, "This object fell from the sky when a sword cultivator slashed the moon. That man had suppressed the fallen moon Forbidden Land for many years. The most important part of the heaven-sealing soul-exterminating formation is the huge meteors that fall from the sky." Lu Ying's pretty face was filled with confusion. With a smile, Yu Yuan said, "I obtained a wisp of sword intent in the fallen moon Forbidden Land, and hid it in my arms. This sword intent was left in the fallen moon Forbidden Land by the sword cultivator who had slashed the moon. The sword intent within the falling star eye, which has become a part of you, also belonged to that man. And this scabbard." With these words, he came to a stop. Back when he had been by the lake, Shen Feiqing had somehow triggered something, which had made his arm bones burn and wreathed them in white mist for some reason. From then on, vast spiritual qi of heaven and earth had poured into them, as if they had received divine help. He still didn't know why the sword light in his arm bones had suddenly accumulated power. With Yen Qiling's help, he had suddenly arrived in this dilapidated city. Only after seeing the scabbard stuck in the enormous skull in the crater did he realize something. This scabbard was most likely the scabbard of the divine sword that had slashed the moon. According to Consort Yu, the divine sword that had almost wiped out the entire Moon Devil clan had fallen into the fallen moon Forbidden Land along with the meteors that had filled the sky and restored the heaven-sealing soul-exterminating formation, making it so powerful that even Emperor Heaven-Shaking and the heavenly Devil Cyan Nightmare hadn't been able to break free from it. However, Consort Yu hadn't mentioned anything about the scabbard. Yu Yuan hadn't expected that the divine sword that had slashed the moon would have a scabbard in the outside world. Moreover, it was in the barren abandoned grounds, and it was stuck on a huge skull. Is this the scabbard that held the divine sword that had slashed the moon? Lu Ying took a deep breath and sensed the sword intent within Yu Yuan's arm bones with rapt attention. Her beautiful eyes gradually lit up. With a sweet smile, she said, "So that's how it is." Taking the initiative to guide a person into her meteor star eyes had broken all her principles. In fact, the fallen star's eyes had belonged to her the moment she had refined them. They had become her most private domain. Sometimes she would use them to carry the disciples of her sect and soar into the starry river. However, she wouldn't allow outsiders to enter unless there was a battle or an emergency. She had felt very uncomfortable when Wang Jinlin from the Vain Spirit sect had broken into her fallen star's eyes. She had only done it because she had been worried about Reverend Skysore and the teleportation portal in the Vain Spirit sect. However, now that she thought about it, she realized that she was the one who had brought Yu Yuan here. Not only that, she and Yu Yuan talked through the night in the fallen star's eyes as if they were in their own room. The more they talked, the more comfortable they felt, as if they had known each other for a very long time. So it's all because of that sword intent. Lu Ying muttered to herself in her heart, her pretty face burning for some reason. That scared me to death. I thought. She calmed down in an instant. Did you also sense the sword intent in the scabbard and come here? Her expression was calm and her tone was gentle as she pointed at the scabbard and said, I've been looking at it for a long time and didn't dare to approach it. If you want to take it, you can try it yourself. I won't stop you. Yu Yuan couldn't help but laugh. He wanted to say that he had come here quickly because he didn't want to see Lu Ying die. Whether it was Yen Qiling, Yu Zhu, or Zhou Tsangmin, none of them had a good impression of Lu Ying, who had the fallen star's eyes. Whoosh! A streak of rainbow-like light whizzed over with unparalleled momentum. The void seemed to be torn apart by the rainbow-like light. Thin, long, and bright cracks shot towards Lu Ying along with the rainbow-like light, like lightning dragons and snakes scrambling to be the first. Commander! Lu Ying's expression suddenly changed. She was about to summon the fallen star's eyes and retreat from the pit. Don't be so reckless. Yu Yuan looked at her and shook his head slightly. With a smile, he said, Don't worry. I told you that I'd show you a feast when you landed on the island at the center of the lake. She. Looking at the rapidly approaching army commander, Lu Ying was secretly nervous. Don't worry, Yu Yuan said softly. After a moment of hesitation, Lu Ying decided to stay. Subconsciously, she took the initiative to walk closer to Nie Tian. The masked Shin Feiqing's petite body finally landed with a loud crash. The moment her feet touched the ground, it was as if the ground had suddenly dropped down. Only after her did the floating island slowly fly over. Yu Zhu and Su Zishi stuck their heads out to look into the pit with strange expressions on their faces. Whoosh! Yen Qiling and the white-robed Grand Tutor landed at the same time. Song Min, that guy from the frigid dark sect. Su Zishi said anxiously. With an expressionless face, the white-robed Grand Tutor said with a casual tone, Fortunately, I didn't let you down. Yen Qiling, who was from the forbidden land of the fallen moons, looked at the Grand Tutor beside him with great apprehension. It was as if Yen Qiling had seen through Zhou Jin's death that this Grand Tutor's cold nature and formidable battle prowess matched it. Yu Shu and Su Zixi left their floating islands high in the sky and descended one after another. "Aunt Su!" Lu Ying exclaimed. Su Zixi smiled, but didn't say anything. Instead, she gave her a meaningful glance, hinting that she should stay closer to Yu Yuan and not talk nonsense. "Everyone's here." Yu Yuan was no longer smiling. He lightly coughed and pointed at the giant skull, asking the Divine Might Empire's army commander, Senior Shun, "According to our agreement, if the secret realm's entrance opens, we will all get a share." Upon hearing these words, Lu Ying was enlightened. When she looked at Yu Yuan again, she felt as if she were looking at a monster. What right did Yu Yuan have to be able to conspire with such an overlord to enter the arcane realm? Chapter 325. Lu Ying found it hard to imagine that experts like Su Zixuan and Yen Qiling, who had profound cultivation bases and profound Taoist magics, would actually have connections with Yu Yuan. What was even more unexpected was that even the Divine Might Empire's army commander had connections with Yu Yuan. As the chosen one of the new generation of the Star Moon sect and the future master of the Star Moon sect, Lu Ying's knowledge of Shin Feiqing was not limited to the Divine Might Empire. Her master and elders in the Star Moon sect all praised Shin Feiqing when they talked about her. There weren't many people who could be praised by her master. With such a peerless talent, a mid-stage soul-traversing realm cultivation, and the cultivation of the forbidden, true, ancient, desolate, empty world mantra, why would such a domineering female war god lower herself to speak to Yu Yuan? Lu Ying was full of questions. Under the ferocious mask, Shin Feiqing took a deep breath. The numerous fine spatial rifts that had followed her here interwove with each other and stopped about 7 meters above her head. She, who was full of vigorous flesh aura, glanced at the huge skull that seemed to be made of platinum and the cyan-black scabbard in the center of the skull, and said in her unique, hoarse voice, "What a coincidence." It is indeed a coincidence. The white-robed Grand Master's nether soul descended into the deep pit like a cluster of white clouds. Wisps of sword intent were suddenly activated at the mouth of the scabbard, which was glowing with a strange light. Fizz! The fine spatial rifts that had been opened by Shin Feiqing suddenly went out of control. The glowing spatial rifts seemed to be infiltrated by the fierce sword intent hidden in the scabbard in an instant, and turned into numerous thin swords that pointed at the white-robed Grand Master's nether soul. At this moment, the flesh aura and soul awareness Shin Feiqing had sent into the spatial rifts were suddenly cut off. Under the mask, a hint of panic appeared in Shin Feiqing's eyes as she shouted in a deep voice, "Don't do anything stupid." She was warning Zhou Tsangmin. The white-robed Grand Master, who had always been elegant, felt that something was wrong when the fierce sword intent in the scabbard cleverly merged with the spatial rifts, and stopped. Upon hearing Shin Feiqing's shout, his nether soul shadow immediately flew back. Those spatial rifts? Zhou Tsangmin was secretly shocked. He could feel the sword essence that had condensed into a solid form, turning into a brilliant light and flowing into the cracks that had opened up. "Feiqing, because of your strange counterattack, you can no longer use the crack that was torn open?" Shin Feiqing's eyes were gloomy as she said, "Yes." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly stared at Yu Yuan and shouted, "What's going on?" The existence of the ancient desolate true art of the empty realm and the empty realm spirit grass was told to her by her master. However, her master had long disappeared beyond the heavens and never returned. She couldn't contact him either. Why would a patch of empty world spirit grass suddenly appear in the wastelands that her master named? And why would the unknown Yu Yuan know the miraculous connection between the ancient desolate empty world mantra and the empty world spirit grass? Furthermore, He was the owner of that patch of empty world spirit grass. Now, the aura of the sword intent hidden in Yu Yuan's arm bone was exactly the same as the sword intent of the cyan and black scabbard. What secret was this strange kid hiding? The white-clothed imperial advisor, Su Zishi, and even Yan Qiling looked over in surprise. There were too many coincidences and too many oddities that made everyone suspicious. Among them, the most surprised and shocked was Lu Ying. With the help of the falling star's eyes, she had already sensed that the spatial cracks that were formed because of Shen Feiqing and were previously controlled by Shen Feiqing had become a little strange after the refined sword intent of the scabbard entered them. Yu Yuan's face was speechless. He raised his hand. With a thought, a vast, ancient, and vast sword intent burst out. 7 feet above Shen Feiqing's head, many fine spatial cracks were like sharp swords that could be used as his arms. Without anyone noticing, the space rifts that had made Shen Feiqing invincible had changed owners and become his weapons, which he now controlled. Yu Yuan, you brat, did you scheme against all of us? Zhou Tsangmin said faintly. From his tone and the look on his face, he seemed to be full of resentment and discontent. He tried to approach the platinum skull, and the sword intent immediately reacted and intimidated him. Could it be that this was Yu Yuan's intention? Could his sword intent move according to his will? How do I know that there's a scabbard in this skull? Yu Yuan felt wronged. Rubbing his temples, he said with a long face, I still don't know what this arcane realm is or where it's hidden. That brown eye, Yan Qiling reminded him. Since he was the most sensitive to spatial fluctuations, he was certain that if there was indeed an arcane realm, and the so-called portal to it, it would be the eyeball in the platinum skull's eye socket. Yu Zhu had also sensed it. On the other hand, the others, including Zhou Tsangmin, were only able to confirm that the eyeball of the skull was the key after hearing his words. The scabbard killed the owner of this skull. Eyes narrowed, Yan Qiling organized his words and said, Don't get one thing wrong. This huge skull with curved horns isn't a human, but it's also not a powerful demon from Howren. This skull, this form, in my impression, I can match it. What? Su Zishi exclaimed in shock. Yu Yuan's face also turned pale with fright. Not a human, not a demon? Yan Qiling nodded with great certainty. This thing is from another realm. Is it a heavenly devil? Shen Feiqing exclaimed in a deep, hoarse voice. Not exactly. Yan Qiling shook his head. After a moment of hesitation, he said, I can only say that this race is extremely rare. Their population is less than 1/10,000,000th of that of heavenly devils. You don't need to know the details, and I can't tell you the details. However, this thing is extremely hard to kill. Even if its skull is pierced, it might not be completely dead. The killer of this scabbard was probably worried that it would rise again, so he used the sword intent within the scabbard to cleanse and refine it day and night. I don't know how many years have passed. Maybe it's dead, or maybe it still has its consciousness. That eye of his seems to be emitting extremely unusual spatial fluctuations. I'm afraid that it's a portal to another dimension. It's also possible that it's in some extremely dangerous place. Once it sets foot in it, it will die there, with no hope of ever returning. As the soul of the soul-splitting stick and an artifact forged by the owner of the bronze coffin, Yan Qiling could be regarded as a member of the Fourth High Sect. The reason why he didn't reveal the outsider's identity and origin was that the Fourth High Sect was responsible for suppressing that thing. If he revealed its name, his identity and origin would most likely be exposed. At that time, even the Red Devil School behind Zhou Tsangmin, the Devil's Palace, and the Goblin Temple would follow the clues and come here. After all, the most powerful sects in Howren had secretly contributed to the destruction of the Fourth High Sect. So what should we do now? Shen Feiqing's eyes were dark, and her entire body was filled with a dangerous aura. I went to great lengths to find this arcane realm, enter it, and find a way to break it when I'm about to be weakened. Yu Yuan asked aloud, "What did your master say?" "Before leaving Howren, he told me that I could find this arcane realm when I was at my wit's end." At this moment, Shin Feiqing didn't try to hide anything. He also said that if I had the confidence to refine my sun spirit, I could come here and try to find this arcane realm. "Then why don't you try to enter that eye?" Yu Yuan suggested kindly. Shin Feiqing's eyes were instantly filled with anger. Yu Yuan hastily said, "Don't worry, I won't stop you." "Those spatial rifts that were opened because of me," Shin Feiqing shouted. "Now that you've taken them from me, how could I dare to enter them? If it weren't for my empty world spirit herbs, you would have been seriously injured and killed by the lightning element sect, the frigid Yin sect, and by Shuang," Yu Yuan said with an innocent look on her face. "That's why I said that you benefited because of me. It was also because of me that you were able to kill Bai Shuang and Jiang Moyan, injure Zhou, and let the Grand Preceptor catch up and kill you. If it weren't for those empty world spirit herbs, I wouldn't have taken the risk. I wouldn't have gone to the lake, but instead wandered around the wasteland for a while, and then hid in the great desolate God Lake." Shin Feiqing said angrily. "There's no way I would have given Jiang Moyan, Zhou, and that silver frost dragon a chance to injure me. I wouldn't have put myself in danger." The two of them suddenly began to argue fiercely. "Well, someone is coming," Lu Ying suddenly said timidly. "Who?" Yu Yuan, Shin Feiqing, and Su Zixi all exclaimed in unison. "His name is Bai Shang." Chapter 326. The falling star's eyes could be regarded as Lu Ying's third eye. This spiritual tool was connected to her soul, and opened a wide vision to her at all times, allowing her to look down at the earth from above like a Yin spirit that had left her body. People as strong as Shin Feiqing and Su Zixi could only sense the most obvious auras. Like a mortal standing on the ground, if a fierce beast like a lion, a tiger, or a giant elephant charged at them, they would know in advance through the shaking of the earth and the breathing of the beast. However, if it was an ant-like insect quietly wriggling in the grass, they might not be able to sense it. Shin Feiqing, Su Zixi, and the others didn't sense Bai Shang, because Bai Shang's flesh aura, soul fluctuations, and spiritual power were negligible in his body. To them, such a Bai Shang was comparable to a fly. However, Lu Ying, who had the falling star's eyes, could not only sense abnormalities, but also see things from high up in the sky. Naturally, she could see everything clearly. As expected, as soon as Lu Ying finished speaking, the man with a cold expression, who was dressed shabbily in coarse hemp clothes and had no sense of presence, seemed to have accidentally barged in. The fierce argument between Yu Yuan and Shin Feiqing came to an abrupt end. "Mr. Bai." Yu Yuan frowned slightly as he sized up Bai Shang, who had come alone, and asked curiously, "That lake is far away from here. How did you get here?" "I walked and walked, and then I came here." Bai Shang stood still and looked at the skull that seemed to be made of platinum as he answered. He clicked his tongue in wonder and mumbled to himself, "Such a huge skull of a dark realm Azura is really rare. The color of the skull is platinum, which means that this dark realm Azura is a platinum-grade war god." He looked up and only looked at Yan Qiling. Yan Qiling's expression suddenly changed. "Who are you?" Just now, when Yu Yuan and the others asked, he didn't tell them the origin of this skull. He only said that it wasn't a human, a demon from Howren, or a so-called extraterrestrial demon. He had thought that someone who could see the origin of this thing at a glance wouldn't appear in the desolate forgotten lands. At least, not yet. Who would have thought that someone would appear out of nowhere and identify the origin of the skull with just a glance? He even determined that it was the platinum war god from the dark domain Azura. Gazing deeply at Bai Shang, Yan Qiling suddenly recalled that this person had followed Yu Yuan down from the wind cloud sail. However, he didn't care about Bai Shang at all, because there was nothing special about Bai Shang. No matter if it was his vital blood, spirit energy, or soul, all of them were extremely ordinary, and he was like an ordinary person that had just stepped onto the path of cultivation. How could such a person enter his eyes? However, it was this strange person with a weak sense of existence that had revealed the origin of the platinum skull as soon as he came over. This made Yan Qiling instantly alert. Dark Domain Azura? Zhou Tsangmin's white-robed Yin god's expression slowly turned serious. I've heard of the legend of this item. It's just that because my realm is not high enough, I'm not qualified to go to outer space to temper my young spirit, so I haven't seen it. After a short pause, he added, however, I heard that the Dark Domain Azura seemed to have been wiped out. There were only a few words about the Dark Domain Azura in the ancient scrolls of the Red Devil School. However, those few words left a deep impression in his mind. The Dark Domain Azura was a strange creature from outer space. Rao Yong was good at fighting. He had a small heaven and earth hidden in his soul eye. He could refine the best interspatial ring. Legend has it that the Dark Domain Azura was wiped out. Bai Shang narrowed his eyes slightly, his expression indifferent. Legends will always be legends. They have never been proven. The Dark Domain Azura with this skull was a platinum war god. His true battle prowess in outer space was roughly equal to our Freedom Realm cultivators. Such a powerful Dark Domain Azura was killed here after his skull was pierced through. He stroked his chin thoughtfully. Sir, how did you learn about the Dark Domain Azura's background and characteristics? Yan Qiling suddenly took a step forward, strange auras surging around him. Also, did you come here to enter the arcane realm? Yu Yuan didn't stop him. He looked at Bai Shang with the same vigilance. It was said that Her Majesty Silver Moon Queen had 3 shadows that helped her become the current empress. They had repeatedly killed the cultivators the Crimson Sun Empire had arranged for her to stand tall. Bai Shang was very likely one of the 3 shadows behind the empress. Where the 3 shadows came from, why they helped the empress, and what their cultivation bases and battle prowess were all unsolved mysteries. If Bai Shang was one of them, could it be the Empress's intention that he had appeared in the wasteland? Even if the Empress came here in person, it would be difficult to shake everyone's resolute will given the situation in front of them. The white-robed state preceptor Zhou Tsangmin, Xin Feiqing, and Yan Qiling were all at least as strong as the Silver Moon Queen. Zhou Tsangmin had been a thorn in the Empress's side for many years, which was enough to prove that he was even more difficult to deal with than the Empress. If that was the case, even if Bai Shang was one of the shadows behind the Empress, he wouldn't be able to cause any trouble if he didn't have a strong enough cultivation base and battle prowess. What Yu Yuan was curious about was that Bai Shang had recognized the skull as the Dark Domain Azura at first glance. In his glorious but short previous life, he had also stood at the peak of a mountain and stood side by side with the most powerful experts, but he had never heard of the Dark Domain Azura. However, Bai Shang knew. Facing Yan Qiling's accusation, Bai Shang remained unmoved. His expression was still indifferent as he stared at the huge platinum skull. As he looked at the scabbard, deep fear and disgust appeared between his eyebrows. Fizz! A wisp of strange soul awareness suddenly ignited and disappeared as it approached Yu Yuan's heart aperture. The bones in Yu Yuan's arms instantly became scorching hot and unbearable. The moment his arm bones became scorching hot, Yu Yuan's expression turned cold as he stared at Bai Shang and said with a strange smile, "You want to kill me?" The fine, bright spatial rifts floating above Xin Feiqing's head were suddenly activated and pointed at Bai Shang. After that, the spatial rifts revealed peerlessly sharp sword intent that shot towards Bai Shang in unison. The scabbard that was inserted into the platinum skull trembled slightly as sword intent surged. Swish! Swish! Bai Shang's expression changed drastically as he let out a muffled groan and his figure suddenly blurred. In an instant, Bai Shang, who wore shabby clothes made of coarse linen, vanished into thin air. It was as if he had never been here. That's not human. Zhou Tsangmin, the white-robed state preceptor, grinned and said with a cold smile, "No wonder I couldn't detect any unusual flesh aura fluctuations." Yan Qiling let out a snort and said, "He's a fish that escaped the net in the forbidden land of the fallen moons, just like the white ghoul and the dark tide." "An earth demon?" Yu Yuan asked, looking astonished. The wisp of strange soul awareness that had attacked him was none other than Bai Shang. However, it was intercepted by the residual sword intent in his arm bones, and dissipated before it could reach his heart aperture. After failing to kill him, Bai Shang cast an earth demon's secret magic, and fled in the blink of an eye. Among the three devils of heaven, earth, and man, earth demons were the best at hiding, scheming, and vicious. Nie Tian had seen this from the earth demon, the white ghoul, and the dark tide. Who would have thought that Bai Shang, who had been with him in the wind cloud sail, was also an earth demon, and his movements were even more unpredictable. According to the legends, there are 3 shadows behind the Silver Moon Queen, Su Xiling said. After a moment of hesitation, her expression flickered slightly as she asked, "Don't tell me that's what she's relying on?" A shudder ran through Yu Yuan as soon as he heard these words. Back when he had been in the forbidden land of the fallen moons, he had learned an unconfirmed piece of information from the white ghoul, the dark tide, and the other outsider souls. According to them, the Silver Moon Empire had been founded with the help of outsider demons like them. Chapter 327. Bai Shang's sudden arrival and disappearance cast a shadow over Yu Yuan's heart. Bai Shang had come on the Silver Moon Queen's orders. He was an earth demon, a fish that had escaped the net of the fallen moon Forbidden Land. Therefore, the 2 figures behind the Empress must also be crooks from the Forbidden Land. Therefore, it seemed that the Silver Moon Empire, which bordered the Forbidden Land, had a lot to do with the Forbidden Land since its founding. The powerful sects and forces in Howren would never allow the other souls to wreak havoc in the world. If the news of the Silver Moon Empire's collusion with the crooks from the Forbidden Land spread, it would probably draw the ire of many sections. At the same time, he, who carried the ancient sword intent, should have been the enemy of all those outsider souls who had been imprisoned in the forbidden area, since he had caused the heaven-sealing soul-vanquishing formation to reappear in the forbidden area. If that were to happen, would it be possible for the Empress of the Empire to kill him under the bewitchment of those demons? Would the Yu clan, where he had been born, be destroyed by the Silver Moon Empire because of him? There's no need to think too much about it. From what I can see, even if the Empress of your empire has some sort of entanglement with Bai Shang, she should only be using him. Zhou Tsangmin said indifferently. It's not as serious as you think. It's common for the Devil's Palace and our Red Devil School's grand cultivators to capture and refine earth demons in dangerous places and use them as the souls of demonic tools. It's not a taboo for Yang Gods and Freedom Realm grand cultivators to travel the Starry River to capture special heavenly demons and practice heaven-reaching incantations. As long as they aren't bewitched by the crooks, it's not impossible to enslave them. Zhou Tsangmin said these words in a very natural manner. However, Yan Qiling's expression was very unsightly, and his eyes grew cold. Yu Yuan was well aware that Yan Qiling was originally the soul of the soul-splitting staff. He had been refined by the owner of the bronze coffin when he was still in the Shenhun sect. Due to fate, Yan Qiling managed to break free with great difficulty. His remnant souls merged into one, resulting in the current situation. After breaking free from the seal of the Forbidden Land and regaining his freedom, because he had been reduced to an artifact spirit for a period of time, he was especially wary of this. Alright, there's no need to care about Bai Shang. With these words, Yu Yuan changed the subject. Pointing at the huge platinum skull of the so-called Azura of the Dark Realm, she said, If that eye is the portal to this arcane realm, who wants to go in and take a look? Everyone looked at Shin Feiqing. The eyes under the ferocious mask were filled with anger and displeasure. He said in a hoarse voice, "If it wasn't for the scabbard, I would have been the first to step in." But now, the strange sword intent within the scabbard resonated with Yu Yuan, causing the spatial rifts she had sent into her flesh aura and soul awareness to become unique swords. These swords were extremely sharp, and the sword intent they exuded made her uneasy. Under such circumstances, her original plan had been disrupted. She suddenly felt that her hands and feet were tied, and she didn't dare to make any rash moves. No wonder the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the abandoned lands has become so thin and barren, Yen Qiling muttered. The Asuras of the Dark Realm were born with only one eye. Their single eye can be used to forge cosmos rings of the highest grade. Every cosmos ring has its own independent space, which is the best place to store things. There's a saying that every Asura of the Dark Realm, whether dead or alive, can absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within 5,000 kilometers of Howran with only one eye. As long as a living Asura of the Dark Realm lurks in Howran, they can rapidly grow stronger with the help of the vast spiritual chi of heaven and earth. That's because the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in their dark realms seems to have dried up. It's extremely difficult for them to leave their dark realms. Every time they leave their dark realms, they will search for realms that are rich in spiritual chi and gather it to strengthen themselves. The vast heaven and earth we live in, which the heavenly devils and outsiders call the central heaven and earth, is the paradise and holy land they dream of. If a living Asura of the Dark Realm can reach this place without being discovered by human grand cultivators, they can grow at a terrifying speed. Even if they're dead, their single eye can still continue to absorb the vast spiritual chi of heaven and earth. This is their inextinguishable instinct and their deep-rooted desire for spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Even death won't change it. Before the Asuras of the Dark Realm are wiped out, the major sects will spare no effort to kill any of them if they're discovered. They don't want to become too powerful, which will be troublesome. This one in the Howran realm should be a dead Asura of the Dark Realm, and he must have been dead for a long time. After a brief explanation, Yen Qiling pointed at the brown eye and said, "That's not some arcane realm portal. There's a small independent heaven and earth inside it. As for the mysteries of the inner space, we can only find out after we enter it." "Yu Yuan, go and unsheathe the scabbard," the white-robed Grand Preceptor suddenly said. "Me?" Yu Yuan rubbed his nose. Zhou Tsangmin smiled and nodded. Then, he swept his gaze over the crowd and said, "As you can see, this scabbard has a deep connection to him. Therefore, I suggest that the scabbard become his personal possession after he unsheath it. Does anyone have any objections?" Everyone nodded. Lu Ying went blank for a moment before saying with an envious expression, "Yu Yuan, that scabbard once contained a terrifying divine sword. The scabbard is still filled with pure sword intent, which is full of wonders. This scabbard is a great opportunity for you. You can't miss it." A look of joy appeared in Yutu's eyes as well, as if she was happy for him. Yen Qiling laughed heartily and said, "Look at you, Yu Yuan. You're really lucky. You've obtained an excellent scabbard even before entering the arcane realm. No one knows the whereabouts of that divine sword. But if you can get the scabbard and keep it for yourself, you'll have a chance to learn about its whereabouts in the future. If that sword still exists in heaven and earth, you'll definitely be able to sense it." Zhou Tsangmin exclaimed softly. "If a divine sword that can cut moons falls into your hands, you'll be the envy of everyone." Everyone kept talking about the wonders of that divine sword, trying to induce him to unsheath it. However, Yu Yuan still felt uneasy. "Aren't you afraid that the so-called Asura of the Dark Realm will suddenly wake up after unsheathing the scabbard before he's completely dead?" Upon hearing these words, everyone fell silent. I don't think that's possible, is it? Suzishi glanced at Yan Qiling, who knew the Azura of the Dark Realm the best. So many years have passed, and the sword intent in the scabbard has been refining this platinum skull. He should be completely dead by now, right? Yan Qiling smiled bitterly. I don't know. Even if he's not completely dead, he can't possibly recover his peak battle prowess, right? According to that man, a platinum Azura of the Dark Realm is equivalent to a Freedom Realm Grand Cultivator. After being killed by the scabbard for so many years, even if he wakes up, he probably won't be able to display even 1% of his strength, right? Luing said. Yan Qiling hesitated for a while before saying, I don't want to lie to you. What I want to tell you is that if this Platinum Azura of the Dark Realm still has intelligence in his skull, he'll be able to recover his battle prowess very quickly after losing the suppression of the scabbard. The point is that his soul eye has accumulated an unimaginable amount of terrifying spiritual power over a long period of time. To the Azura of the Dark Realm, that soul eye is equivalent to our lower Dantian's Huangting acupoint. It's the crystallization of energy. As long as he wakes up and can use the power of the Azura of the Dark Realm, he can use the spiritual power of heaven and earth stored in the soul eye to climb back to the peak in a short period of time. Maybe it's a platinum-level god of war at the peak of his combat power. If that's the case, it'll be very difficult for everyone here to escape. Yan Qiling laid out all the possible scenarios without leaving anything out, and explained them clearly and thoroughly. Then, he didn't say anything more. He wanted everyone to decide for themselves. Everyone fell silent once more. If a Freedom Realm Grand Cultivator was invited to hold the fort, Yu Yuan would be the safest person to pull out the scabbard. But every Freedom Realm Grand Cultivator was world-shaking. Most of them stayed in the various large sects for a long time, either cultivating in seclusion or soaring through the sky with their young spirit. It was impossible for the Red Devil School to summon a Freedom Realm Grand Cultivator in such a short period of time. The Platinum Skull was right in front of them. They couldn't wait too long. Otherwise, the Spirit Void sect would discover that something was wrong and come to the barren abandoned lands through other means. At that time, they wouldn't be as relaxed as they were now. Instead, they would have to face the heavy pressure of the 7 inferior sections. It seems that it's a little difficult for everyone to decide. Yu Yuan pondered for a long time. Suddenly, he smiled brightly and said, Isn't it just a Dark Realm Azura who might not be completely dead? I don't think there's a need to be so nervous. At worst, when we sense that something is wrong, we can immediately abandon the barren abandoned lands and leave it to the grand cultivators of the Howran world to worry about. All right, I'll go pull out the scabbard now. Chapter 328. The stars gradually faded, and the curtain of night slowly faded. The sky gradually brightened. A wind cloud sail whistled through the air, its speed quite fast. The old general of the Silvermoon Empire kept guiding the sail, making it adjust its angle. His message came from Bai Shang. Li Yuchan, Yuan Lianyao, Zhang Tianxiang, Zhao Yafu, Su Yen, Su Xiangtian, Yen Yu, and even the Divine Might Empire's Wei Feng were among them. Yang Yinquan of the Taiyuan sect was also invited to join the wind cloud sail. However, Qin Yun of the 7 Divinities sect and Ning Ji, who called himself an old servant, were not among them. The wind cloud sail, which was originally responsible for transporting people, became unusually congested due to the large number of people. This was because Fan Yen and other influential figures of the Empire's major clans were also among them. Those people did not choose to leave after the wind cloud sail returned to Anua City. The secret realm's entrance was no longer a secret in the barren forgotten land. Everyone had seen Xin Feiqing's actions in the middle of the lake, killing Jiang Moyan and chasing after Zhou Jin. The island that was originally embedded in the lake had a grand flight, which foretold many things. Under such circumstances, the curious people dared to face some dangers. What's more, they weren't considered weak when they gathered together. The people on the sail looked down from time to time. Those with better eyesight could see that the Black Fiend army soldiers were still charging at the chilling insect and lightning sect cultivators hiding in the dark. After the spatial rifts left, many corpses were forever buried in the grass. No one would have thought that so many people had died in this barren land that no one cared about for many years because of the Secret Realms legend. The Grade 7 Silverfrost Azure Dragon, the dragon attendants of the Dragon Concealment Lake, 2 Soul Wander Realm cultivators, and many Een gods and subtle realm cultivators had all been killed by Shin Feiqing, the Black Fiend army, and the spatial rift. This further confirmed that there was definitely something unusual within the barren forgotten land. Old General, is the place we're heading to where the secret realm is? Su Yan's beautiful face shone with excitement. Big brother you, is that floating island in the same place as us? This was what many people were thinking. Li Yuangui paused his communication with Bai Shang and turned to look back. Yang Inquan of the Taiyuan sect smiled at him and said, "You don't have to hide it from me. There's something I need to tell you." Li Yuangui looked at the expectant crowd, especially Su Yan, and said, "If you still have the illusion that the powerful cultivators of the 7 sects will come, I'm afraid there's no hope for that in the short term." Hearing this, Yang Inquan could no longer laugh. But something happened to the teleportation array built by the Spirit Void sect? Mr. Yang is a sensible person. Li Yuangui nodded slightly. The teleportation portal that the Spirit Void sect spent a fortune to build was destroyed by the Scarlet Sun Empire's Imperial Preceptor. Meanwhile, the man who showed up in the Forbidden Land of the Fallen Moons and had a close relationship with Yu Yuan tampered with the spatial veins of the spell formation. Yang Inchuan's expression grew grim as he said, "How dare Zhou Tsangmin do that? Mr. Yang, do you really think that the Imperial Preceptor of the Scarlet Sun Empire will be recruited by the Primal Yang sect as an elder and a Yang god cultivation base?" Li Yuangui asked. Yang Inquan frowned. "What do you mean? That Imperial Preceptor of the Scarlet Sun Empire should be a devil seed from the Red Devil School," Li Yuangui said. "His rank should be the highest among them." A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Those who didn't know the inside story all gasped. Zhou Tsangmin, the Imperial Preceptor of the Scarlet Sun Empire and a powerful expert that the Primal Yang sect paid close attention to, was actually from the Red Devil School, and the highest-ranked Devil Seed? For example, the Red Devil School and the Devil's Palace had more than one Devil Seed. There was a ranking system for Devil Seeds in the sect. The highest-ranked Devil Seed was the one who was most valued, had the highest contributions, and was most qualified to become the sect master. Yuan Lianyao, who was also in the Wind Cloud Sail and had a close relationship with the Crimson Fiend sect because she was valued by Fang Yao on Autumn Boat, stared at Li Yuangui with a cold gaze. She really didn't know why Li Yuangui would reveal the true identity of the Imperial Preceptor. Before Li Yuangui revealed the identity of the highest-ranked Devil Seed in the Red Devil School, not many people knew about it. The Imperial Preceptor no longer hid his identity, and he was no longer afraid of the Primal Yang sect and the Scarlet Sun Empire learning the truth. However, if he could continue like this, it would be much more convenient for him to do things in the future. Now that Li Yuangui had revealed it, many things were different, and the Imperial Preceptor would have a lot of trouble doing things in the future. According to Zhou Tsangmin, the Silver Moon Empire and the Red Devil School had secretly formed an alliance. Furthermore, the Empress had met her and entrusted her with important tasks, acknowledging her. Li Yuangui was clearly a member of the Li family, and the Empress of the Silver Moon Empire was the head of the Li family. The Empire and the Red Devil School were at such an intimate moment, so why would this old general reveal the Imperial Preceptor's background to the Taiyuan sect? If the Taiyuan sect knew about the Imperial Preceptor's identity, then the entire world knew about it. The Imperial Preceptor was still bitterly cultivating in the Scarlet Sun Empire, refining the Sun God's true body. Would he be targeted by the Primal Yang sect and framed by the Flame Sun Emperor? Many distracting thoughts lingered in Yuan Lianyao's mind, making her suspect Li Yuangui, the entire Li family, and the Empire. She was also worried. Li Yuangui had arranged for the Wind Cloud sail to carry so many people. It was one thing to leave Qin Yun behind, but why did he not even bring Ning Ji? The Divine Might Empire's Wei Feng was among them. Zhou Tsangmin is actually from the Red Devil School, and it's the highest-ranked Devil Seed. Then, it's possible that he will be in charge of the Red Devil School in the future. I didn't expect that the Imperial Preceptor, who brought the Scarlet Sun Empire step by step and suppressed us, was actually from the Red Devil School. He was even favored by the Primal Yang sect and wanted to be recommended to cultivate there. It's really shocking. On the sailboat, everyone was in heated discussion. On the other hand, Yang Yinquan, who knew the truth, suddenly fell silent. He sat on the ground without moving. No one knew what he was thinking. Many people are rushing over with the help of the Silver Moon Empire's Wind Cloud sail. Their location is extremely accurate. It should be that by Shang who leaked the information. Lu Ying glanced at the falling star eyes and discovered that the night had faded away, and a ray of sunlight shone down from the rising sun. Another night has passed. Silver Moon Empire? The white-clothed Imperial Preceptor sneered. Don't worry too much. I can hear some words. Senior's identity as the highest-ranked Devil Seed in the Red Devil School has been exposed. Lu Ying said. She wasn't so shocked by many things now. Su Zishi was originally the person who guarded the gilded treasure ship and protected Wei Wujiang and her. But now, this Python Queen was with Zhou Tsangmin and conspiring with Xin Feiqing in the secret realm. Yu Yuan, who wasn't famous, had that ancient sword intent and was recognized by Yan Qiling and stood side by side with these powerhouses. Zhou Tsangmin, who was originally the Devil Seed of the Red Devil School, wasn't so strange anymore. Thank you for your concern. Zhou Tsangmin laughed softly and said, Since you said those words, I've decided not to kill you. How could the Flaming Sun Emperor, who was like a brother to him, not know that he was the Devil Seed of the Red Devil School? Moreover, he didn't plan to hide it. He was prepared to walk in this world openly as a devil cultivator. What was there to be afraid of? Suddenly, everyone fell silent, because at this moment Yu Yuan, who had landed in the pit, was standing in front of the platinum skull. From afar, the platinum skull that belonged to the dark domain Azura was huge. It was actually taller than Yu Yuan. Yu Yuan, who was standing, couldn't even reach the scabbard with his hands. Yu Yuan raised his head and looked at the scabbard on the dark domain Azura's skull. His gaze wandered around the brown eyeball that was like a fist. He pondered for a moment and didn't rush to pull out the scabbard. Instead, he stretched out a hand and suddenly pointed at the brown eyeball. What are you doing? The female commander, Xin Feiqing, saw his movements and suddenly changed color. She shouted to stop him. Chapter 329. Yu Yuan paid no attention to Xin Feiqing's exclamation. He clasped one of his hands and pointed at the brown eyeball in the platinum skull. The tip of his longest middle finger touched the eyeball first. Fizz! Fizz! All of a sudden, the bright spatial rifts above Xin Feiqing's head suddenly burst forth with unparalleled sword intent. Divine light swirled around the scabbard in the skull as wisps of sword intent formed a profound connection with the slender spatial rifts. Yu Yuan's arm suddenly became as red as iron. The sword light coiled around the joint like a dragon or a python became unusually active. The boundless, ancient, and vast sword intent that had fused with him seemed to be gradually awakened from the depths of his arm bone. The sword intent was so fierce that it started to channel the spiritual power in his lower dantian region. At this moment, the moment he touched the brown eyeball, the sword intent was completely stimulated, as if it wanted to shoot into the brown eyeball and enter the inner world it was hiding in. Shin Feiqing's flesh aura erupted like a volcano. She was so angry that she wanted to jump into the hole. However, just as she was about to move, the spatial rifts created by her true incantation of the ancient desolate spatial world morphed into terrifying swords that pointed at her from afar. Shin Feiqing's body suddenly stiffened. Being pointed at by the swords, she felt her heart tremble. It was as if her 3 souls would be annihilated the moment she made a move. Facing the threat of death, she hastily stopped. "Don't act rashly." The white-robed Imperial advisor was still calm as he said, "Without those spatial rifts for you to use, you've lost your powerful battle prowess, but you've also avoided the most terrifying backlash. With those spatial rifts, you've already killed Bai Shuang and Jiang Moyan. And I've also killed Zhou Jin for you. Feiqing, you should thank Yu Yuan." Zhou Tsangmin frowned slightly. Before she knew it, he was already standing in front of her and hovering over the hole. With a serious expression, he said, "Yu Yuan touched the eye of that Azura of the Dark Realm with his finger. Is there a problem? Feiqing, are you hiding something from us?" Su Zixi also noticed that something was wrong. While paying attention to Yu Yuan, she said, "Feiqing, Song Min and I came here because we don't want to see anything happen to you. When you sensed the empty realm's spirit grass, you were secretly prepared and did not inform us. We were all worried about you, but you hid a lot from us." If Yu Yuan had not pointed out the secret between the empty world spirit grass and the ancient desolate empty world true incantation, the 2 of them would have been kept in the dark. At this moment, Yu Yuan was standing in front of the huge platinum skull. When he reached out to touch the dark domain Azura's eyes, Shin Feiqing suddenly screamed. Her behavior was clearly abnormal. They couldn't help but guess that Shin Feiqing was hiding something from them. As soon as Shin Feiqing made her move, both Yan Qiling and Yu Zhu fixed their cold gazes on her with unfriendly expressions. From the looks of it, as long as Shin Feiqing dared to make a move on Yu Yuan, they would immediately tear up the agreement and work together to kill this female commander. Without the additional support from the spatial rifts, this commander might not be a match for them. Moreover, judging from the looks on Zhou Tsangmin and Su Zixi faces, they were also suspicious of Shin Feiqing. "I'm afraid that he will destroy the arcane realm and the dark domain Azura's eyes." Shin Feiqing took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. Then, she said anxiously, "Don't you feel it? Don't you see that the sword intent that is compatible with the scabbard is quietly brewing and is about to shoot out when he touches it? That sword intent carries the power of the spatial rifts and the scabbard's own power. It will completely destroy the arcane realm." "The way I see it," Yan Qiling said, "he might not be able to destroy the arcane realm. He might just be going deep into it to kill something." "What do you mean?" The white-robed Grand Tutor was surprised. There must be something in the dark domain Azura's eyes that triggered the sword intent hidden in Yu Yuan's arm bone, and made Yu Yuan feel threatened. Yan Qiling snorted and said, "Based on my understanding of that sword intent, there must be something strange in that brown eyeball that shouldn't still be there." Before Yu Yuan unsheathed his scabbard, he sent a wisp of sword intent into that small world and killed it. "That's obviously a good thing." With these words, Yan Qiling's expression grew grim. "I even suspect that the discarnate soul of that platinum-grade dark domain Azura is hiding in your so-called arcane realm." Yan Qiling's words were sonorous and forceful. The sword intent of the shaken kill and the scabbard that refined the skull are from the same origin as the sword intent of Yu Yuan's arm bone. Furthermore, the sword intent in Yu Yuan's arm bone carries traces of his sword soul. His sword soul is intelligent and perceptive. It must have sensed his aura, and that's why it used Yu Yuan's arm to wield it. "My lord!" Yan Qiling's voice gradually rose, his expression grim and vigilant. Don't tell me that you already knew that the dark domain Azura wasn't completely dead, and that he still had his discarnate soul and awareness. Or perhaps your master, who has fled to the starry river, once communicated with the discarnate soul of that dark domain Azura, and made a secret agreement with him? Did you come to this arcane realm to set him free? Your master didn't do that back then. Don't tell me that the discarnate soul of that dark domain Azura knew that the time wasn't right, and that he still needed to absorb the spiritual chi of Wasteland for decades or even centuries before he could finish his task. Yu Zhu, Su Zishi, the white-robed Grand Tutor, and Lu Ying from the Star Moon sect all gasped upon hearing Yan Qiling's words. As they looked at Shen Feiqing again, they all started to feel uneasy and suspicious. You really know how to make fun of me. Shen Feiqing's eyes were cold. I don't even know what this skull belongs to. How could I have colluded with him? Besides, what good would it do me to help an outsider from another starry river? If he's really not dead and is set free, will I still have a place in Howran? She glared at Yan Qiling with disdain. If you can successfully refine your soul with the help of the dark domain Azura, you'll be able to break free from Howran and reunite with your master, who is far away in the starry river. With a casual expression, Yan Qiling said, a platinum-grade dark domain Azura, whose battle prowess has returned to its peak, can return to the starry river and help you. Shen Feiqing said, You're talking nonsense. I'm indeed talking nonsense. I don't have any evidence. Yan Qiling didn't deny it. But remember, don't try to stop Yu Yuan from doing anything. If you dare, don't blame me for being rude. Su Zishi looked at him and said softly, Songmin? The white-robed Grand Tutor frowned and said, Feiqing, the dark domain Azura is an outsider from another starry river. If you release him, I won't be able to answer to the sect. The conflict between us and the sects of the Tianyuan continent is an internal conflict. But in the starry river, we have the same attitude towards our enemies. So, whether he's telling the truth or not, please don't provoke us. These words had set the tone for the discussion. If Shen Feiqing dared to act recklessly, everyone around the crater would point their spears at her. Don't worry, I won't. The female commander nodded and stepped back. She didn't look at the crater or care about what Yu Yuan was doing. She did this to avoid them and dispel their suspicions. Hiss! Yu Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. When he touched the brown eyeball with his fingertip, he felt as if he had touched an extremely cold block of ice. Wisps of extremely cold energy quietly seeped into his fingertip. The eyeball, which looked normal and didn't emit any unusual aura, was so cold the moment he touched it. The coldness seemed to be able to freeze his soul and make his 3 souls tremble. He suddenly felt as if he was in a pitch-black, icy darkness where he couldn't even see his own fingers. He couldn't sense anything, hear anything, or feel anything. Fizz! The blazing sword light in his arm bones quietly gathered at his fingertip. The sword light, which had been branded in his arm bone and replenished with his supernatural power, came to help him ward off the extreme coldness in the dark realm Azura's eyes at this critical moment. He suddenly felt that every time his sword intent was stimulated, his arms would become scalding hot. Perhaps it was for this moment. It was for him to touch the dark domain Azura's eyes with his body. It was for him to be able to resist the extreme coldness without moving his fingertip before his sword intent reached its peak, so that he could activate the sword incantation hidden in his body. It's all for this moment. Chapter 330. What his fingers touched should be a different world. It was a dark, cold, dead, and desolate place. It seemed to be the so-called Dark Realm that had given birth to the Dark Realm Azura. It wasn't a wondrous place that was rich in spiritual chi, rare plants, and spiritual ores, as Shen Feiqing had said. His arm bone felt unbearably hot. The spiritual power that had gathered in his spiritual sea in his lower dantian region was rapidly drained. The spiritual power flowed through his arm bone and merged with the interweaving sword lights, making them even more sparkling and translucent. His meridians looked like red crystals, with crimson lightning bolts flashing within them. Fizz! All of a sudden, a glowing spatial rift that was as thin as a hair suddenly fell towards his shoulder. Yu Yuan's face turned pale with fright. Before he could react, the spatial rift shrank again, penetrated his skin, and flew into his arm bone, where it turned into a wisp of strange power in his sword light. Zhou Tsangmin, Su Zishi, Yan Qiling, and the others' eyes lit up. He couldn't believe that one of Yu Yuan's arms was absorbing spatial power and absorbing the spatial rift that had appeared because of Shen Feiqing's counterattack into her body. Such a shocking turn of events made them feel incredulous. Nothing happened? Shocked, Yu Yuan hastily examined his arm bone with his psychic awareness, and then found that nothing was wrong with it. The spatial rift that had shrunk again seemed to have condensed into an even sharper sword intent that merged with the sword light in his arm bone to strengthen the power of his next attack. After the first, there was a second and a third. Fizz! Fizz! The terrifying spatial rifts that had been created by Shen Feiqing and allowed her to kill Bai Shuang and Jiang Moyan shrank into white lightning bolts one after another and shot into Yu Yuan's arm. With every spatial rift that flew into Yu Yuan's arm, it was filled with a terrifying sword intent. Shen Feiqing, who had deliberately stood far away from Ye Tian, couldn't see her face under the mask, but her exposed eyes seemed to be wreathed in coldness. The spatial rifts that had fused into Yu Yuan's arm should have belonged to her. When we were in the forbidden domain of the fallen moon, Yu Yuan was connected to the heaven-sealing soul-transforming formation. Every swing of his sword carried the terrifying power of the grand formation. Floating in midair, Yan Qiling said with a grim expression. However, I have a feeling that the sword incantations he used in the Forbidden Land, the soul-transforming pool, and the grand spell formation weren't as powerful as his next one. Zhou Tsangmin deeply agreed. The next sword strike is indeed soul-stirring. Experts at their level could see and feel that as the spatial rifts turned into sword intent and merged into Yu Yuan's hand that was pointing at the dark domain Azura's eyeball, the monstrous sword intent emanating from his arm bone was so sharp that their eyes and souls felt uncomfortable just by looking at it. What were their cultivation realms? Just by looking at it, his eyes and soul became dry, feeling a faint stabbing pain. Just how powerful was that sword? Yu Yuan is only the medium for that sword strike, Su Zishi chimed in. Those spatial rifts, that scabbard, and the power he infused into his arm bone are the true source of power. Right now, Yu Yuan has temporarily turned into a sword that carries that ancient sword intent to kill his mortal enemy. Lu Ying from the Star Luna sect suddenly staggered and almost fainted. Her garments were wreathed in dazzling starlight, and bits of enchanting starlight flew into her body. The rising sun hung high in the sky. A stream of immense star power poured down from the enormous starfall eye like a waterfall and fused into her body, helping her resolve her discomfort. Yan Qiling shot her a sideways glance and snorted. Mind your own eyes, girl. With your current attainments, you shouldn't stare at that sword intent. Look at it with your own eyes and soul. Even he and Zhou Tsangmin felt uncomfortable, let alone Lu Ying. Lu Ying had almost fainted because she had stared at Yu Yuan's hand for a long time, using a secret technique to see through her eyes and perceive it with her mind. My kind advice, Zhou Tsangmin said. You'd better close your eyes and look at it with your starfall eyes. Enveloped by the waterfall of star power, Lu Ying rapidly recovered her flesh power and spirit power. She recovered from her weakened state within a few breaths of time. It was because her cultivation and strength were relatively low that she could recover in such a short time with the help of the Starfall Eyes. If she had been at the Soul Wander Realm or the Yang God Realm, she wouldn't have been able to recover so quickly with the help of the Starfall Eyes. Thank you for your reminder, Senior. Lu Ying was tactful. Her long eyelashes fluttered, and she obediently closed her eyes. She took a few steps back, keeping a distance from the crater and Yu Yuan, and immersed herself in the starfall eyes. The starfall eyes, which had fallen a lot, became her third eye, replacing her true vision. She looked down from the sky and paid attention to Yu Yuan's every move. The wind cloud sail is approaching quickly. They may arrive before Yu Yuan can swing his sword. With her eyes closed, she reminded them in a low voice and told them what was happening. Fei Qing, if the wind cloud sail appears later, go and stop it. Zhou Tsangmin turned his head and looked at the female commander. The spatial rift that should have penetrated your flesh is now pulled and swallowed by Yu Yuan's arm and turned into the power of that sword. You won't be affected by the backlash anymore. With your strength, it should be easy to stop the wind cloud sail from approaching, right? Yan Qiling, Yu Zhu, and even the Python Queen Su Zishi suddenly turned to look at her. Fei Qing pondered for a few seconds and said, "Okay." Boom. She stomped the ground and her petite body suddenly soared into the sky. Like a rainbow, she disappeared into the sky in an instant. The shaking of the earth still didn't calm down. Whoosh! Yan Qiling intertwined his hands. Many fine ripples suddenly appeared in the space around the crater. They were invisible to the naked eye, and only souls could sense them. She can't hear us anymore. With a grim expression, Yan Qiling looked at the white-robed Grand Preceptor and said, "Lord Grand Preceptor, you sent the commander away because you felt it was inappropriate, right?" Both Yu Zhu and Su Zishi were waiting for Zhou Tsangmin to speak. The white-robed Grand Preceptor nodded slightly. "I don't know much about Azura of the Dark Domain, but I know a little more about Fei Qing. She's a person who goes to extremes easily. You said that she might know that Azura of the Dark Domain's soul and intelligence haven't been completely destroyed. Given her personality and reckless drive, it's possible that she has some kind of tacit understanding with Azura of the Dark Domain." "Tsangmin, you also think that there's something wrong with Fei Qing?" Su Zishi asked anxiously. "Of course Fei Qing didn't do that to harm us or do anything to us," the white-robed Grand Preceptor explained. "She must have her reasons. Maybe she wanted to kill the monarch of the Divine Might Empire, or she wanted the current sect master of the ancient Desolate sect to pay the price and avenge his master. There might be other reasons that we don't know. But if she really did that, Azura of the Dark Domain would come back to life, and after absorbing the world's spirit energy of the barren land for thousands of years, he would really possess platinum-rank strength. Then, the Grand Preceptor, who was feared and respected in the Silver Moon Empire, the Scarlet Sun Empire, and the Divine Might Empire, sighed deeply. The commander didn't stop the wind cloud sail. Lu Ying, who had her eyes closed, suddenly changed expression and said, "She disappeared. I observed her with my meteor eyes, but I still lost track of her in an instant." "I knew it." Yan Qiling's face was cold. "This friend of yours, from the beginning to the end, has been toying with you and all of us." Zhou Tsangmin shook his head and smiled bitterly. "The situation I didn't want to see the most has already happened. Tsangmin, we cared so much about her, but she hid everything from us." Su Zishi was displeased. Since she could resolve the problem of the backlash with the empty realm spirit grass, and wanted to kill Bai Shuang, Zhou Jin, and Jiang Moyan, why did she hide it? After Yu Yuan saw through it, she made an agreement with us to enter the secret realm. But how did she do it? Even now, we don't know what she's thinking. We don't know if the information she revealed about the secret realm is true or false. We don't even know what she wants to do in the barren land. Su Zishi was full of complaints, but she had already made a decision. Mr. Yen is right. What the commander really wants to do is to awaken Azura of the Dark Domain. Inside the crater, Yu Yuan's finger was still pointing at the brown eyeball. The aura of sword intent released by his hand was so strong that it seemed to be able to cut through time and space. She and Bai Shang should be on the same path. Also, I can sense that Azure of the Dark Domain is still alive, and his remnant will is hiding in his eyeball. Chapter 331. The sun shone brightly. The congested wind cloud sail gradually slowed down in the air. The old general of the Silver Moon Empire stood at the bow of the ship, holding the railing with both hands. The veins on his fingers were exposed due to the excessive force. His heart was beating faster, and his overly excited mood caused his shoulders to tremble slightly. Wisps of information that Bai Shang had transmitted to Nye Tian entered his mind one after another. He knew that he was about to reach his destination. Old General Li. Su Xiangtian called out softly to attract his attention so that he could notice him. Li Yuangue took a deep breath again. His eyes were blank as he looked back at the famous pillar of the nation and said, "What's the matter?" Su Xiangtian, with graying temples and a free and easy temperament, had an obvious worry on his handsome face. "Old General, my daughter and I went to the Taiyuan sect and just returned not long ago. I heard that the Empire and the Red Devil School have formed a secret alliance? Don't listen to rumors." Li Yuangue waved his sleeves. After saying this, he looked coldly at Yuan Lianyao, his eyes full of warning. Yuan Lianyao, who had received Fang Yao's personal promise and was secretly received by Zhou Tsangmin, was confused. Could it be that Lord Fang Yao and the Grand Tutor would lie to her? If there was no problem with those two sects, would there be a problem with the old general of the Empire in front of her, a clansman trusted by Her Majesty? "I see you, Yuan." At this moment Li Yuchan, who had been releasing his Yin soul and floating in the air, suddenly called out softly. Many people scattered around the edge of the ship narrowed their eyes and looked at the dilapidated city in the distance, looking for traces of Yu Yuan. Their realm was insufficient, and they had not condensed their Yin souls. They could not see anything through their Yin souls. Yang Yinquan, Li Yuangue, and a few others instantly stared at Yu Yuan when Li Yuchan's voice fell. "Scarlet Sun Empire, Zhou Tsangmin. The Grand Tutor is also among them. Zhou Tsangmin's Yin soul is traveling far away and accompanying Yu Yuan. Also, who is that? Python Queen Suzishi? The Python Queen who suddenly rose to power in the Divine Might Empire?" Screams and shouts could be heard from the ship. The cultivators and dignitaries of different countries, who had been brought onto the ship by Li Yuangue and belonged to different factions, began to talk noisily. Among the crowd, Wei Feng stood alone with an indifferent expression. She seemed to turn a deaf ear to the crowd's discussion. Zhao Yafu and Zhang Tianxiang, both of whom were from the Zhao clan, approached Wei Feng and looked at her curiously from time to time. Zhao Yafu had gained the favor of the White Heavenly Tiger and was given a jade token that represented her identity. She was already considered a member of the Demon Hall. Zhang Tianxiang had received the secret inheritance of the ancient god Golden Elephant since he was young. He cultivated the orthodox demonic arts and was also a disciple of the Demon Palace. However, if one's innate talent was outstanding and their bodies possessed rare natural endowments, they would be able to cultivate demonic arts and not die prematurely. Usually, they would have great perseverance and great luck. There were some humans who became great demons in the Goblin Temple. Zhao Yafu and Zhang Tianxiang both cultivated demon arts and received the Goblin Temple's acknowledgement. One day, they would officially step into the Goblin Temple on the Tranquil Continent and advance. The two of them must have sensed the unusual aura in Wei Feng's body and approached her. Zhang Tianxiang looked at her for a long time, then grinned and laughed strangely. "No discord, no concord. I really didn't expect that you and I were the same kind of people." Wei Feng looked at him coldly and snorted. "I don't hold grudges," Zhang Tianxiang said with a smile. Wei Feng lowered her head and ignored him. "It really is Big Brother you." Zhao Yafu, who was lying on the edge of the ship, finally saw Yu Yuan after Feng Yunfan approached again. Eh? How strange. Big Brother Yu's finger is pointing at a brown eyeball. That eye is a huge skull. It looks like the skull of a great demon. Where? Zhang Tianxiang's curiosity was aroused, and he immediately moved closer to her. Wei Feng, who had been sitting alone in a corner, slowly rose to her feet and walked towards the edge of the ship to see what was going on. Shoo! A figure suddenly appeared in front of Wei Feng like a ghost. Wei Feng only took a glance at him before she felt dizzy and her consciousness blurred. Wei Feng! Zhao Yafu and Zhang Tianxiang exclaimed in unison. Bai Shang, who had quietly arrived, grabbed Wei Feng by the back of her neck, as if he were holding a chicken. He nodded at Li Yuangui and said, "Thank you." Wei Feng had already fainted. Yang Yinquan, Su Xiangtian, and the other cultivators on the ship were instantly alarmed and looked over. Fan Yen, who had quarreled with Bai Shang before, looked at Bai Shang with fear in his heart. He subconsciously shrank into the crowd, as if he was afraid that Bai Shang would see him. Unfortunately, Bai Shang didn't even spare him a glance. Bai Shang, who was holding Wei Feng, only exchanged a glance with Li Yuangui. Then, like a gust of wind, he carried Wei Feng out of the wind cloud sail and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "Old General, what's going on?" Su Xiangtian shouted. Zhao Yafu and Zhang Tianxiang both sensed the deeply hidden demonic energy in Wei Feng's body and looked at Li Yuangui in surprise. Even Yang Yinquan of the Taiyuan sect felt that something was wrong. He walked over and looked deeply at Li Yuangui with a puzzled expression, wanting to know who Bai Shang was. As soon as Bai Shang appeared, he felt uncomfortable all over. "Bai Shang is acting on the Empress's secret order," Li Yuangui said in a deep voice. Su Xiangtian, Li Yuchan, and the other nobles of the Silver Moon Empire had no way of pursuing the matter when he mentioned the Empress of the Silver Moon Empire. Although Yang Yinquan was a member of the Taiyuan sect, he couldn't ask any more questions at this time. However, a layer of dark clouds appeared in everyone's hearts. They felt that there was something wrong with this old general, and that Bai Shang was scheming something. Bam! Bai Shang threw the unconscious Wei Feng on a piece of purple satin on the ground. The purple satin seemed to be made of purple light. As soon as Wei Feng fell into it, she shrank dozens of times and turned into a pocket-sized person. She suddenly woke up and found that she had fallen into a strange place filled with purple light. A petite figure wearing a ferocious mask sat in the middle of the purple cloud. "Lord Commander!" Wei Feng's face finally showed a hint of joy, like a drowning person who had finally caught a piece of driftwood. "After you sent me a message through the Heart Lake, I've been quietly waiting on the Empire's golden ship. I didn't kill myself or fight with Wei Wujiang. I was just waiting for your next order." Shin Feiqing's voice was low and hoarse. "You did well." Wei Feng let out a sigh of relief and said with admiration, "I saw Milord open a spatial rift and kill that Silver Frost Azure Dragon. I saw Milord kill Jiang Moyan." Shin Feiqing's eyes were as calm as an ancient well. She didn't say anything. Bai Shang's figure suddenly flew in from the outside world and appeared in this small heaven and earth filled with purple light and clouds. He shot Wei Feng a pitiful look. "It's you." Wei Feng's expression flickered as she said anxiously, "Lord Commander, he's the one who captured me." "I know," Shin Feiqing said with an indifferent tone. "How pitiful." Bai Shang's expression was cold. "She doesn't know anything. She thinks you're her savior. She thinks you're doing everything you can to protect her. You're even willing to become enemies with the Divine Might Empire and betray it." Bai Shang shook his head and said, "You humans are the most cunning and ruthless creatures in this world, not us earth devils." Bai Shang shook his head. In this vast world, the human race stepped on the corpses of giant dragons, great demons, and earth devils to climb to the top. In the Starry River, you fought heavenly devils and slaughtered other races because of your terrifying nature. Upon hearing these words, Wei Feng's whole body turned cold. She looked at Shen Feiqing with fear and despair. Bai Xiang's words had already revealed enough information. The look in the eyes of the Lord Commander, who she worshipped, who had taken her to the Black Fiend army when she was a child, and who had protected her in every way, made her knees tremble. It was as if he were looking at an exquisite painting, a magnificent treasure, or a table full of delicious food and wine. However, it didn't seem like he was looking at a person. Chapter 332. All of the spatial rifts that Shen Feiqing had created flew into Yu Yuan's hand. It was as if his hand had morphed into a divine sword with heaven-rending sword intent. His finger, which was resting on Azura's brown eyeball, trembled non-stop, as blue and crimson sparks sputtered from his fingertips. The blue sparks came from the brown eyeball, which contained frigid, crystalline light. The crimson sparks came from the scorching sword light in his arm bone, which had neutralized the frigid power and shattered it. Yu Yuan's soul awareness was focused on his fingertip as he sensed the soul-stirring collisions. His expression was grim and focused, and he didn't dare to relax in the slightest. The sword intent that had gathered the spatial rifts and the sword light in the scabbard hadn't been fully unleashed yet. That was because his sword soul hadn't fully awakened yet. However, the battle between Nye Tian's sword intent and the brown eyeball had already begun. Every second, every moment, hundreds of scorching streaks of light flew out of the crisscrossing crimson sword energies and flew towards the brown eyeball. Meanwhile, the brown eyeball, which was the size of a fist, was surrounded by numerous frigid crystalline sparks that intercepted the streaks of scorching light. In the extremely small area where Yu Yuan's finger was in contact with the eyeball, a battle that he couldn't observe, but could vaguely sense, was actually raging like a raging fire. The sword strike hadn't finished accumulating power, and hadn't been launched yet. The streaks of scorching light formed by Nye Tian's sword intent took the lead, as if they were marching ahead of an army. He could vaguely sense that there was an extremely powerful will in the heaven and earth inside the brown eyeball, which was driving the power of the small world to gather the frigid crystalline sparks and fight against the sword intent that had taken the lead. He had encountered many outsider demons in the forbidden land of the fallen moons, and witnessed the fierceness of powerful demons like the heavenly devil. The enormous will that controlled the heaven and earth inside the brown eyeball should be at the same level as the heavenly devil. Thinking of what Bai Xiang had told him and Yan Qiling's speculation about Azura of Dark Realm, he had to believe that Azura of Dark Realm, who had been suppressed and refined by the fierce sword intent in the scabbard for who knew how many years, was still alive. The remnant soul and intelligence had been hiding in the eye for a very long time. If he really pulled out the scabbard first, without the suppression of the scabbard, the dark domain Azura, whose remnant soul and intelligence had hidden in the eyeball, would most likely be able to escape. Once he regained his freedom, his flesh and blood would be reforged, and his combat strength would return to its peak. He would be a platinum-level god of war. Thinking of this, he shuddered and cursed Shen Feiqing in his heart. Lord Imperial Tutor and Senior Su, Yu Yuan said with a cold face, I don't care what kind of deep friendship you had with that army commander in the past, but what she is doing now will kill all of us. Yu Yuan, is the dark domain Azura really still alive? Zhou Tsangmin's expression was grave. With a grim face, Yu Yuan shouted, It's true that there's a remnant will inside the eyeball. The next sword strike is meant to kill that remnant will. But I think... He suddenly noticed that Feng Yunfan had quietly approached and appeared in his field of vision. Bai Xiang just appeared out of nowhere and kidnapped Wei Feng from our Divine Might Empire. With her eyes closed, Lu Ying told everyone what she had seen through her meteor eyes. Bai Xiang took Wei Feng and disappeared from Shen Feiqing's sight. Yu Yuan might be right about one thing, Bai Shang and Xin Feiqing were probably on the same path. Before anyone could react, she added, the old general of the Silver Moon Empire, Li Yuangue, said that Bai Shang was acting on the Silver Moon Queen's orders. Upon hearing this, Zhou Tsangmin, Su Zixi and Yan Qiling, who were standing around the crater, suddenly turned to look at Feng Yunfan. Li Yuangue was among them at this moment. My safety is the most important thing, Yu Yuan suddenly exclaimed. Bai Shang, Xin Feiqing, and possibly others. What they did was probably to release the dark domain Azura and make him manifest in the forsaken Forgotten Lands. What I'm doing now is to kill his remaining consciousness. I still need some time. Zhou Tsangmin's expression flickered as he said, You're right. Su Zixi and Yan Qiling, who had originally intended to charge out and descend onto Feng Yunfan to kill or capture Li Yuangue, immediately calmed down. At this moment, what Yu Yuan was doing was the most important thing. The reason why Yu Yuan had turned himself into a sword in the scabbard after the numerous spatial rifts had merged into it was to accumulate enough power for the next sword strike. In order to kill the remaining consciousness of the dark domain Azura in the brown eyeball, he had to kill him thoroughly. Bai Shang and Xin Feiqing had planned this. If they wanted the dark domain Azura to live, they had to stop Yu Yuan before he swung his sword. The best way to do that was to kill Yu Yuan. Pung! The clothes on his arms suddenly turned to dust, as if they couldn't bear the terrifying sword intent in his arm bone anymore. The skin of Yu Yuan's arm that was exposed to the air was like that of a cooked red shrimp. The veins under his skin had expanded a lot, and divine light could be vaguely seen flashing through them like lightning bolt. The expanded veins under his skin looked like fierce dragons and vicious pythons that were rampaging under his skin. An extremely fine wound suddenly split open on the back of his hand. Then, a second wound appeared, and a third. A few seconds later, the back of Yu Yuan's hand was covered in wounds, with blood seeping out. This was a bad sign. After being refined by the soul-transforming lake, Yu Yuan had broken through the spirit-nurturing stage and reached the Golden Hall stage. His fleshly body was many times tougher than that of his peers. However, it still couldn't bear such terrifying sword intent. Wisp after wisp of sword intent converged on his hand. After clashing with the power of the frigid dark domain in the brown eyeball for a while, the flesh on the back of his hand began to tear. His sword soul hadn't been fully awakened, and he hadn't swung his sword yet. Would Yu Yuan be able to take it during this period? His body could, but what about his mind and soul? This isn't good. Su Zixi's bright eyes trembled slightly as she moved her plump lips and said, His cultivation base is too low. It's too difficult for him to use that terrifying sword intent and sword incantation as his sword. Zhou Tsangmin also frowned deeply. He was only at the middle Golden Hall stage, and hadn't entered the profound breaker stage. He couldn't fully display the wonders of the evil demon body tempering art. Therefore, Yu Yuan might not be able to bear the sword intent and sword light and unleash that sword incantation. You guys take care of him. The white-robed Grand Tutor hesitated for a moment, and then disappeared into thin air. He suddenly appeared in the wind cloud sail, which had finally stopped, and stood next to the old general. Zhou Tsangmin clasped his hands and bowed. It's been more than a year since we parted in the Forbidden Land. It's an honor to see you again, old general. Lord Grand Tutor! Zhou Tsangmin. Everyone in the wind cloud sail was shocked, and their expressions suddenly changed. Yuan Lianyao's beautiful eyes lit up, and she was about to come forward and bow, but she was stopped by his gaze. The Supreme Abyss Sex Yang Yinquan looked at the person in front of him. Li Yuangue had revealed his true identity. He was the highest-ranked demon seed in the Crimson Demon sect. He couldn't help but admit that this person was indeed a strange genius. Lord Grand Tutor, what are you doing here? Li Yuangue pretended to be surprised. Zhou Sangmin took a deep look at him, shook his head, and chuckled. Whoosh! A white light formed by Zhou Sangmin's spirit flashed between Li Yuangui's eyebrows. Li Yuangui's expression froze. His eyes were filled with pain and fear. Someone as powerful as Yang Yinquan and Li Yuchan with a Yin soul could see a white-robed figure flickering in the depths of Li Yuangui's eyes. Li Yuangui was also a late-stage Yin spirit cultivator, but he couldn't even scream in front of Zhou Sangmin. Zhou Sangmin flashed through his sea of consciousness, dantian and Naiwen acupoints, searching his memories and depriving him of his senses. He was bold to do this in front of so many nobles of the Silver Moon Empire and Yang Yinquan of the Taiyuan sect. Whoosh! Zhou Sangmin's white-robed figure flew out of Li Yuangui's eyebrows and squeezed out through a narrow window. Flames poured out of Li Yuangui's 7 orifices, and his sea of consciousness burned as if it was on fire. The white-robed Grand Tutor looked at the furious Li Yuchan and sneered. Silver Moon Empire, Li family, haha. Chapter 333. Li Yuangui collapsed to the ground. His 3 souls had been ignited, and his eyes were as black as charcoal. There were still flames moving in his nostrils and ears. The demonic flames that burned his mind and soul were the most orthodox crimson refining demonic arts that the Grand Tutor cultivated. The Grand Tutor had refined dozens of types of earth fire from Howren's heaven and earth into one. The handsome white-robed Grand Tutor looked like a fiery god at this moment. Torches burned in the depths of Zhou Sangmin's Grand Tutor's eyes. The aura from them was filled with the mysteries of destruction. It really is the Red Devil School. Yang Yinquan from the Taiyuan sect had a bitter smile on his face. He took a few steps back and put some distance between himself and Li Yuangui's court. Aren't you afraid that your identity will be exposed and you'll be attacked by the Primal Yang sect? Aren't you afraid that the families and sects of the Scarlet Sun Empire will denounce you? The Primal Yang sect? The Scarlet Sun Empire? The white-robed Grand Tutor sneered disdainfully. Yang Yinquan stared deeply at him, sighed inwardly, and didn't say anything else. He could see that Zhou Sangmin was destined to become a demonic powerhouse on the Tranquil Continent. In the future, he would be as talented as the sect master of the Spirit Void sect, or even surpass him. If someone like him was afraid of the Primal Yang sect and the Scarlet Sun Empire, he wouldn't be worthy of being called the #1 demonic seed in the Red Devil School. Li Yuchan wanted to kill the clan elder after seeing him dead. However, Yuan Lianyao, who didn't see eye to eye with her, moved and stood beside her. She put a hand on her shoulder and said softly, "Don't be rash. The old general's death might have something to do with Bai Shang. Don't do anything rash. He's a member of the Li family," Li Yuchan said angrily. The white-robed Grand Tutor sneered. "That Bai Shang isn't a human at all. He's a demon that should have been suppressed in the Fallen Moon Forbidden Land. Bai Shang is an earth demon. Someone must have obtained something from one of the trials organized by the Silver Moon Empire, and his soul is residing in it. Earth demons are cunning and vicious. They hate us. Don't tell me you don't know that?" As soon as these words came out, the expressions of everyone in the wind cloud sail changed. If Bai Shang was an earth demon and acted under the orders of the Silver Moon Queen, then what about the Silver Moon Empire? Could it be that the 3 legendary shadows behind Her Majesty the Empress were like Bai Shang, evil demons of the Forbidden Lands? In Howren, humans and demons are still humans, but because of the different cultivation techniques, they are called demons. Zhou Sangmin snorted. Humans and demons are represented by the Devil's Palace and our Red Devil School. However, heavenly demons and earth demons were completely different. The devils outside of Howren are known as heavenly devils, while the ones inside are known as earth devils. Heavenly demons and earth demons are similar in nature. They are not the same as us at all. They have always viewed us as enemies. That's why a large number of heavenly devils and earth devils have been suppressed in the forbidden land of the fallen moons. As an earth demon, how could Bai Shang be willing to be suppressed by the forbidden land of the fallen moons? No matter what kind of secret deal he has with the Silver Moon Queen, he is still against us. After Zhou Tsangmin said those words, he glanced at Li Yuangue, who was lying on the ground, unable to get up. Then, he said indifferently, since this old general knew about the deal between Bai Shang and Her Majesty and was ordered to help, he deserves to die. Inside the wind cloud sail, all of the nobles of the Silver Moon Empire were flabbergasted by the white-robed Grand Preceptor's words. Even Yen Yu, Fan Yen, and the powerful figures of the 5 great clans started to panic. Associating with an earth demon was a grave crime that no one would tolerate. Even if the powerful sects of the Tianyuan continent learned that the Silver Moon Queen had formed an alliance with the Red Devil School, they wouldn't make a big fuss about it. After all, the other empires, the Red Devil School, the Devil's Palace, and the Goblin Temple all had connections to one extent or another. The Devil's Palace, the Goblin Temple, and the Red Devil School had been relatively harmonious before the war between the 2 continents had broken out. The small conflicts between the 2 continents had been tacitly approved by both sides. The so-called small conflicts between the Tianyuan continent and the Tranquil continent were between cultivators below the Yang spirit stage. Those who hadn't entered the Yang spirit stage didn't have the right to break free of heaven and earth and soar in the starry river. Cultivators below the Yang spirit stage could only move about in their own realms. Their battles and competition were conducive to the birth of more powerful cultivators and the birth of Yang spirits, and the freedom stage. Therefore, the 3 great sects, the 7 lesser sects, the Devil's Palace, the Goblin Temple, and the Red Devil School wouldn't make a big fuss over the deaths of cultivators below the Yang spirit stage. They didn't want to provoke a war between the 2 continents and the internal strife of the human race, which would benefit the enemies of the other continents. If the Silver Moon Empire had allied with the Red Devil School, the Devil's Palace, and the Goblin Temple, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But Earth demons were different. Earth demons weren't humans, and they were naturally close to heavenly demons. They had long been viewed as malignant tumors by the human race. The cultivators of the 3 continents would often hunt down or refine Earth demons when they discovered them. There were also human demonic cultivators from the Devil's Palace and the Red Devil School who were active in strange places all year round, searching for earth demons to refine artifacts as their demonic souls or key to cultivating demonic art. Earth demons' anger and hatred towards cultivators was well known to all factions. The powerful sects of the Tianyuan continent and the Tranquil continent had clearly stated that the empires of the Qianxian continent weren't allowed to ally with earth demons because it would endanger the human race. The Silver Moon Queen had a secret agreement with earth demons like Bai Shang. If news of this spread, it would be a devastating blow to the entire empire. The Li family isn't the only family in the Silver Moon Empire. The Li family is only the temporary ruler of the empire. Fan Yen of the Fan family suddenly jumped out and looked at Li Yuangue's corpse with disgust. If the Li family colluded with earth demons, then they aren't fit to lead the Silver Moon Empire. There were also a few other nobles from other clans who echoed the sentiment. Even Yen Yu pondered for a few seconds and said, "The Li family's actions can't be blamed on the entire Silver Moon Empire. The other families and sects didn't know." Su Xiangtian nodded. "That's true." Li Yuchan, whose shoulder was pressed down by Yuan Lianyao, heard their words and looked at the Taiyuan sect's Yang Yinquan and the white-robed state teacher's expression. The Li family's transcendent and royal status in the Silver Moon Empire might change drastically because of this. The family might even be wiped out. On the wind cloud sail, the Li family members like her suddenly fell into deep fear and unease. They didn't know what would happen in the empire after this matter. That old general died because he knew that Bai Shang was old demon. He knew it was earth demon, but he still obediently handed over Wei Feng. Shouldn't he die? Zhou Tsangmin only looked at Yang Inquan when he said this. Yang Inquan represented the Taiyuan sect and the sects of the Tianyuan continent on this ship. Yang Inquan nodded heavily without hesitation and said with an unyielding attitude, "Since that person is Earth Demon, and old General Li knew about it and acted according to orders, then he deserves to die. Also, if it can be proven that Bai Shang received orders from the Silver Moon Queen, someone will naturally come out and kill your empress." These words made their attitude clear. The sects of the Tianyuan continent, including the Devil's Palace and the Goblin Temple, treated the Earth Demon tribe and the countries allied with Earth Demons with the same unyielding attitude. "You're Mr. Yang, right?" Zhou Tsangmin hesitated for a moment, then said to the Taiyuan sect's representative, "I destroyed the teleportation formation set up by the Spirit Void sect in the Wastelands, but I didn't destroy it. I also killed everyone gathered there. There's no denying it. But now I know I was wrong." "What do you mean?" Yang Inquan hurriedly asked after recovering from his shock. "Someone lured me to destroy that teleportation formation because they didn't want the Freedom Realm cultivators of the Tianyuan continent and Tranquil continent to arrive in time." Zhou Tsangmin understood and guessed what Xin Feiqing and Bai Shang wanted to do. Without Freedom Realm cultivators, it's very likely that they won't be able to suppress them. He felt a headache coming on. What's going on? Yang Inquan was burning with anxiety. He wanted to know the truth. "That thing." The white-robed Grand Preceptor pointed at the enormous platinum skull. "That thing is called the Dark Realm Azura. It's platinum grade. He's not completely dead. His remnant soul and consciousness are inside the brown eyeball. Feiqing, Bai Shang, and some other sneaky people might want to wake him up." "Platinum grade Dark Realm Azura?" Yang Inquan was shocked. The others on the ship didn't know what to do. "It's equal to our Freedom Realm cultivators." Li Yuchan's expression changed. How did you know?" Zhou Tsangmin was surprised. I heard my sister mention it once." Li Yuchan bowed her head in pain. Her sister was the current patriarch of the Li family, the Silver Moon Queen. Chapter 334. Drops of blood could be seen on the back of Yu Yuan's hand, which looked like crimson dewdrops on tree leaves in the morning. The skin on the back of his hand, which had been pressed against the Dark Realm Azura's eyeball, started to split open. Then, fine wounds started to appear on his forearm, starting from his palm. Even though his fleshly body had been tempered for a long time, it still couldn't bear the burden of the sword intent and the power of the sword light. The pain of his flesh and blood was one thing, but the torment of his 3 souls was another. He didn't know when it had started, but an extremely cold and dark aura had already started to poison his soul. He had to circulate his heavenly soul to connect with the extreme wisdom soul-tempering incantation and borrow the power of the outsider souls in the soul-transforming lake in the depths of the forbidden land of the falling moons to keep his mind clear. Wisps of fragmentary soul awareness from the Dark Realm Azura's eyeball invaded his mind from time to time. His willpower was being hammered and tempered all the time. The slightest carelessness could cause him to lose his mind and fall into an irrecoverable state. He was in the most dangerous situation he had ever been in since he had started his cultivation. Yu Zhu, Yan Qiling, and Su Zixi were all paying close attention to him and keeping their guard up. They all knew that if Yu Yuan's guess was right, their army commander and Earth Devil Bai Shang wouldn't let him off the hook so easily. They would definitely make another move. A purple rainbow strangely formed under the scorching sun at noon. If one looked closely, they would discover that it wasn't a rainbow, but rather a purple satin that was flying through the air. The purple satin was embroidered with exquisite patterns that looked like auspicious purple clouds. Under the blazing sun, the purple satin suddenly burst forth with dazzling divine light. A small heaven and earth hidden within it. Yan Qi Ling raised his head to take a look, and his face became solemn. It must be Xin Feiqing and Earth Demon Bai Shang. Lu Ying, who had been observing heaven and earth with her meteor star eyes, suddenly rose to her feet. She suddenly pointed a jade-like finger at the sky. The meteor star eyes hovering high in the sky shone with dazzling light. In the clear sky that was as bright as day, a bright star suddenly bloomed, attracting everyone's attention. Star eyes, activate. The huge silver meteorite turned into a vertical eye in the sky. It was bright and sparkling. Lu Ying could sense that the purple satin fabric that had been targeted by the meteor star eyes was being washed away by the vast star power like a sea. Star energy seeped into the satin in an attempt to capture even the tiniest of details. Bai Shang snorted coldly in a strange small world filled with purple auspicious clouds. The petite army commander sat upright and still. Wei Feng, who had been taken care of by her since young and had been brought to the Black Liao army by her, floated 5 feet above her head. Drops of purple blood, the color of silk, seeped out of Wei Feng's skin. The drops of purple blood gradually turned into purple rays of light that interweaved and engraved into a giant phoenix that was filled with a mysterious aura. The purple phoenix was condensed from the blood that had been forced out of Wei Feng's body. This giant purple phoenix's aura was isolated by the small world inside the satin fabric, but it still emitted waves of vast demonic energy that dazzled even the army commander. In the commander's perception, this enormous phoenix with its wings spread out was like a volcano that was spewing out pure demonic energy. That girl from the Star Luna sect is spying on us. Bai Shang snorted coldly and said to Xin Feiqing, "Try not to borrow her blood essence and demonic energy. After that person's soul fragment and consciousness are gathered, they need her blood essence to reconstruct their flesh and bones. Whether or not they can recover completely depends on the purity of Wei Feng's blood essence." Xin Feiqing frowned and suddenly punched the sky with her small fist. A fist mark flew out of the purple satin fabric. Lu Ying's mind was connected to skyfalls, and she suddenly saw a pocket-sized fist emerge from the purple satin. It carried with it a violent force that could distort space and time as it dispersed the star energy that had submerged the satin. The starlight that filled the sky sputtered like raindrops. Lu Ying let out a muffled groan as a trickle of blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth. 2 small fist marks appeared in the depths of her eyes for a moment before quickly fading away. She sat down and suddenly opened her eyes. With a frustrated expression, she said, "You guessed right. The army commander and Bai Shang are both in there." "What else did you see?" Yan Qiling asked with a grim expression. "I saw Wei Feng." Lu Ying sighed softly. "Wei Feng's blood is purple. Drops of it are being stripped from her body and turned into devilish purple light, which condensed into Lord Demonic Phoenix's original form. The caster is the army commander. I don't know what she's trying to do. Wei Feng. What she wants is Wei Feng's blood essence." Su Zixi exclaimed. "That should be it." Lu Ying nodded slightly. "She's different from Zhao Yafu and Zhan Tianxiang. Zhao Yafu and Zhan Tianxiang are both pure people with extraordinary talent who happen to be able to cultivate demonic incantations. But she's different. The demonic blood flowing in her body has suddenly become incomparably pure after generations of Lord Demonic Phoenix. Feiqing raised Wei Feng since she was a child, took her away from His Majesty, and protected her in every way. So it wasn't because she cherished her talent or loved her," Su Zixi said quietly. She knew long ago that the blood flowing in Wei Feng's body was Lord Demonic Phoenix's. What she's been doing all this time is to stimulate the demonic blood in Wei Feng's body and make her even purer. She doesn't care about Wei Feng's life or death at all, or whether Lord Demonic Phoenix has sensed her future. She just wants the demonic blood to achieve her goals, strengthen herself, or accomplish some unspeakable things. Swish! Zhou Tsangmin's figure returned from the wind cloud sail and stood in the crater. Crack, crack! Crack, crack, crack! All of a sudden, the rubble in the dilapidated city began to crack open for no apparent reason. Low sobbing sounds came from the depths of the earth below the city. Before long, a white-haired, doddering old woman floated out of the ground, leaning on a cane. Her white hair hung from her head to her cheeks, covering her face. Through the gaps in her hair, a pair of gloomy, dark eyes could be vaguely seen. If one took a closer look at the hunched old woman, they would discover that all of her white hair was actually tiny snakes. The cane she was leaning on was a piece of white bone, which was as sharp as a sword and had fluorescent light swirling around it. I've heard of her. She's one of the so-called three shadows of Her Majesty, the Silver Moon Queen. Zhou Tsangmin took a glance at her and said, like Bai Shang, she's probably an outsider soul who escaped from the forbidden land of the fallen moons at an unknown era. She must have received help from the Li clan since she was able to recover. The white-haired old woman raised her head and bowed towards Nye Tian through the white snakes that were as fine as hair. This isn't the first time we've met, Lord Grand Preceptor. You met me when you traveled through the forbidden land of the fallen moons when you were young. It's just that you didn't know it was me back then, and I didn't expect you to reach such heights. After a short pause, she added, if I had known you were so powerful, I would have killed you back in the Forbidden Land. Zhou Tsangmin was taken aback. After racking his brains for a while, a shudder ran through his body. It's you. I was bewitched by a crooked devil when I was in the profound break stage and meditating in the Forbidden Land to break through into the subtle realm. Are you that crooked devil? With a chuckle, the white-haired old woman suddenly thrust her bone cane towards Yu Yuan's back. Countless slender white snakes transformed into thousands of white lightning bolts and flew out of her head in an instant, shooting towards Yu Yuan from the sky and the earth. In a flash, the purple satin that was floating in the air expanded 100 times before suddenly falling down from the sky. Bai Shang's ghostly figure was the first to fly out. As he fell, he looked at Yan Qiling and said, as a prisoner of the Forbidden Land, you should have stayed with us instead of helping that sword-wielding kid. I'm an earth devil. Aren't you an inhuman being too? And you? He then turned to look at Yu Zhu. Chapter 335. Yushu wasn't a human either. 300 years ago, Yu Yuan had left her in the Jade Peak mountain range. She had been suppressed by the restrictive spell, and hadn't been able to break out of the marshland for a long time. At one point, she had hated everyone who had come to the Jade Peak mountain range. She had quietly killed many greedy people who had come to the trial in the Jade Peak mountain range. She had waited bitterly for Yu Yuan to come, keep his promise, and take her away. She had waited for 300 years. For 300 years, she had lived alone in the dark marshland. The sadness, helplessness, and abandonment had been eroding her all the time, making her, who had just awakened her intelligence, become dark, cruel, and ruthless. But in the end, Yu Yuan had come as promised. Too late, indeed. After Yu Yuan had explained that something had gone wrong with his reincarnation, and after the heaven-shaking changes in the Ill Wind Valley, she had finally chosen to forgive and accept Yu Yuan. She had regarded Yu Yuan as her father, and had accompanied Yu Yuan back to this abandoned land, which was compatible with her great Tao. Only after arriving here did she realize that the abandoned land was her birthplace. It was just that Yu Yuan had brought her to the Jade Peak mountain range after making her. After all, the Jade Peak mountain range had been the Heavenly Medicine Sect's territory, and Yu Yuan had been the sect master of the Medicine Gods sect at that time. Therefore, the Jade Peak mountain range had been under Yu Yuan's control. Yu Yuan hadn't expected what had happened after that. He hadn't expected that his senior martial brother would stab him in the back and delay his reincarnation by 300 years. You'll come with us. You won't be bound by anyone. you'll be able to experience the wonders of the starry river. Bai Shang, who was in the form of a poor scholar, cast the bewitching spell that earth demons were best at. Why do you want to be enslaved by a lowly human brat? Intelligent creatures like you should soar into the heavens and be worshipped by billions of other creatures. He had long since realized that Yushu, who had lived for more than 300 years, was only a child. She had spent a long time in the swamps of the beefing mountain range and had hardly talked to anyone. Her mind was still relatively simple, so she should be easily bewitched and persuaded. With Yushu's help, their operation in the Desolation Land would be much safer and smoother. As a matter of fact, Shun Feiqing had later reached an agreement with Yu Yuan. She had been overjoyed to learn about the existence of U2. If it weren't for U2, they wouldn't have been able to locate the gigantic dark domain Azura's head so quickly and accurately. He had only arrived in time because of Shun Feiqing's message. Therefore, in his eyes, U2, who could be said to have been born from Wasteland, had a lot in common with Earth Devils, since she was compatible with the great Tao of Wasteland. However, Yushu didn't show even the slightest emotion in response to his sincere persuasion. Puff! Pu. Thousands of white snakes that were as thin as hair turned into ashes as they tried to bite Yu Yuan's back. The graceful figure of Su Zixuan, the Python Queen, suddenly appeared behind Yu Yuan. 7 sinister-looking pythons suddenly shot out of her garments, their flesh auras churning. The 7 giant pythons spread out and devoured the slender white snakes with relish. Standing in midair, Su Zixuan smiled and took out a jade flute from within her sleeve as the white bone cane pierced towards her like a sharp sword. As soon as the flute made of white jade appeared, it gave rise to ear-piercing screams. The screams were aimed at the white-haired old woman. 2 balls of white light inexplicably gathered in the ears of the old woman who had thrust out her bone cane, and suddenly flew into her ears. The white-haired old woman let out a muffled groan as the path of her sharp bone cane towards Yu Yuan became twisted and crooked. Su Zixuan casually tossed the jade flute out of her hand. A streak of divine light flashed through the air like a bolt of lightning. With a loud clank, it slammed into the bone cane and pierced towards the old woman's neck. It went right through her neck. After piercing through the old woman's neck, the jade flute circled around her before returning to Su Zixuan's hand. Holding the jade flute, Su Zixuan frowned slightly, feeling that it was too easy for her. If this old woman was an outsider soul who had escaped from the forbidden land of the fallen moons like Bai Shang, and one of the 3 shadows behind the Empress, she shouldn't be so weak. She couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. Zixuan, be careful. The white-robed imperial preceptor's garments fluttered in the wind as he stepped into the heavens. 1 pillar of blazing soul light after another shot straight into the heavens. The pillars of soul light were as blazing as the sun as they unleashed raging soul flame power that shot towards the purple satin. His target was none other than Shun Feiqing, who was refining Wei Feng's demon blood and hiding in the satin. Upon hearing his words, Su Zixuan looked over with rapt attention, and her eyebrows furrowed even deeper. The white-haired old woman, whose neck had been pierced by the jade flute, was still grinning from ear to ear. Not a single drop of blood flowed out of the hole in her neck after the jade flute flew away. Furthermore, the wound seemed to have been stitched up by a divine craftsman. In the blink of an eye, the wound had already healed. Holding the white bone cane, the eyes under the hair became even more gruesome and terrifying. She let out a low, gruesome laugh. Those 7 pythons of yours. Yu Yuan, whose fingers were still on the dark realm Azura's brown eyeball, suddenly had a bad feeling. When he had communicated with the depths of the soul-transforming lake with his heavenly soul had become unusually sensitive. When the dark realm Azura's frigid will had infiltrated his 3 heavenly souls, he had felt a stabbing pain, which had made him even more vigilant. That was why he had suddenly sensed that the weak soul awareness of the slender white snakes that had been devoured by the 7 pythons was actually growing stronger. It's not the pythons devouring the snakes, but the snakes are strengthening themselves with their flesh auras. Her white snakes are tearing and devouring your pythons. Yu Yuan reminded her with a loud shout. Su Zixi expression suddenly changed. In an instant, she realized what was wrong. The slender white snakes released by the white-haired old woman were too easy to kill and devour by the pythons. This clearly didn't make sense. Python Queen Su Zixi, a human who cultivates demonic art. The white-haired old woman leaned on the white bone cane, her tone gloomy and cold. To be able to obtain the Goblin Temple's acknowledgement and walk further and further on the path of demonic cultivation, you are indeed a top figure. The demonic spirits you raised with your flesh aura are also not weak. You even accomplished the magnificent feat of a python devouring a dragon. Right now, I'm giving you a taste of your own medicine. I know who you are. Yan Qiling coldly snorted. At this time, Yu Yuan also suddenly interjected. You're a demonic snake that was expelled by the Goblin Temple and suppressed in the forbidden area. Just like Long Tianshao, your body and bones have been destroyed. Only your demonic soul remains in this world. Your demonic soul is still being refined in that white bone cane. I don't know who found it and brought it out of the forbidden area. That's her. Yan Qiling's eyes brightened. The instant Yu Yuan mentioned the white-haired old woman's origins, he received a message. The sword spirit was awakening. The sword spirit was scattered among the many sword lights in Yu Yuan's arm bone. Its soul was scattered. After it gathered again, the sword spirit would completely awaken and possess its own intelligence and memories. It was impossible for Yu Yuan to not have known the white-haired old woman's origins at the beginning and suddenly know. Unless it was the sword soul that had awakened after more than a year. Then, the sword spirit had sensed the white-haired old woman's flesh aura and transmitted information about her origins to Yu Yuan. Senior Su, that demonic snake had a peak 8th rank bloodline when it was alive. It was equivalent to a late sun spirit cultivator. Please be careful. As Yu Yuan reminded Su Zixi, the flesh on his arm split open and blood flowed without end. Chapter 336. Yan Qiling's expression suddenly flickered. When Yu Yuan revealed the white-haired old woman's identity, he was overjoyed and secretly excited. His sword soul was awakening, which meant that Yu Yuan's sword strike, which had been accumulating power, would soon be launched. With that slash, the Dark Realm Azura's remaining consciousness and soul should have been completely annihilated. There was no chance of him coming back to life. As long as the Dark Realm Azura didn't show up, Shun Feiqing, Bai Shang, and the white-haired old woman's plan wouldn't come to fruition. Even though his sword soul was about to awaken and form that sword strike, Yu Yuan's arm was bleeding non-stop. Yan Qiling was extremely worried that Yu Yuan's body would explode into pieces of flesh and limbs before his sword soul could unleash all of its sword light and sword intent. If that happened, they would definitely be killed in the desolate abandoned lands, and the platinum-grade Dark Realm Azura would descend. You'd better think of a way to help him. You're the only one I can think of. Yan Qiling shot a glance at Yu Zhu. Then, without waiting for Yu Zhu to do anything, he pulled Bai Shang in front of him, as if he had reversed time and space. The place where Yan Qiling and Bai Shang were suddenly filled with flowing light and colorful light, and many grooves appeared in the space around them. Unknown foreign powers poured out of the spatial rifts in the sky. Yan Qiling, who was well versed in spatial power, split into thousands of shadows that flew back and forth, as if they were forming a ceiling formation. Earth Devil Bai Shang stood alone in the collapsed space. Dressed shabbily in coarse linen clothes, he narrowed his eyes and lowered his head, as if he were waiting for something. All of a sudden, a beam of dazzling golden light arrived. The Spirit Void sect disciple, Wang Jinlin, who was riding the dark gold, stepped on a broadsword tempered with golden dragon scales. He looked terrified. Junior Marshal Sister Lu. Wang Jinlin, who didn't know what to do, exclaimed when he saw Lu Ying. Lu Ying, who was ready to escape at any moment, was surprised to see him appear. She was stunned and asked blankly, "What are you doing here?" I didn't want to come either. It's him." Wang Jinlin pointed at the dark gold spiritual sword that was shining with golden light under his feet. Just as Lu Ying was about to reply, she suddenly saw Earth Demon Bai Shang glance at Wang Jinlin expressionlessly. "Hurry up and run," Lu Ying kindly reminded him. Wang Jinlin shuddered. Bai Shang did not say a word. He raised his hand and made a grabbing motion towards Wang Jinlin. All of Wang Jinlin's bones cracked and cracked. His fleshly body, which could be considered strong, fell limply onto the dark gold sword as if it had fallen apart. Puff, puff, puff. The profound gate in his middle dantian exploded, and a gush of bright red blood essence merged into the dark gold. The spot between his eyebrows also exploded. Immediately afterwards, tiny characters that were as small as the size of flies morphed into a string of golden magical symbols that flew out of his forehead and were crushed by Bai Shang. As soon as the golden magical symbols were destroyed, Wang Jinlin's 3 souls were no longer protected. They exploded in his mind like dazzling fireworks. Bai Shang, who was targeted by Yan Qiling from the Earth Demons, shot into the air and morphed into a streak of light that shot towards the dark gold sword. Wang Jinlin's corpse was reduced to a bloody ball of flesh that rolled towards the spatial seal Yan Qiling had placed on it. As soon as it fell into the spatial seal, the corpse exploded. Broken bones, a rain of blood, and bits of flesh all contained the power that Reverend Skysoarer had imprinted on it. Because of a dead body, the collapsed space started to tremble endlessly. Meanwhile, Bai Shang held the dark gold divine sword in his hand and sent his soul awareness into it to dissolve the restrictive spells that Reverend Skysoarer had placed on it, making it shine 10 times brighter than before. Lu Ying let out a low sigh. Vast amounts of star energy from the meteor fall star eyes suddenly poured into her body. She didn't dare to stay any longer. The Star Moon sect had placed high hopes on this girl, who was being groomed as the future sect master of the Star Moon sect. She turned into a beam of starlight and entered the meteor eyes. Then, she drove the huge meteor to fly even higher into the sky. Only when it was high enough, so high that even cultivators below the Yang God realm couldn't reach it, would it be safe. As soon as Wang Jinlin died, she knew that with her low cultivation base, it was very likely that she would be crushed to death like Wang Jinlin had been by the mob of trolls around the crater. The reason why Reverend Skysoarer of the Spirit Void sect's beloved disciple had died at Bai Shang's hands was because he could use the dark gold sword. A man's wealth was his own ruin. If Shen Feiqing, Bai Shang, or the white-haired old woman targeted her with the falling star eyes, then wouldn't she be unable to escape calamity? Wang Jinlin died just like that? Within the wind cloud sail, Su Yan blinked and looked at the change below. She said in a dreamy voice, "He was Reverend Skysoarer's disciple. Who among those below would be afraid of Reverend Skysoarer?" Yang Inchuan's expression was extremely grave. Generally, the dazed Li Yuchan let out an "ah" and looked at him in shock. The wind cloud sail belongs to the Silver Moon Empire. The one who brought us here was you, the Li family elder. Yang Inquan instinctively felt uneasy and said urgently, "If you don't know the truth, please tell the person who controls the wind cloud sail to take us away from this place." At this moment, most of the people on the sail were the nobles of the Silver Moon Empire, Yang Inquan, and the people from the Taiyuan sect. Li Yuangue had brought them here and sold Wei Feng to Bai Shang. Now it was proven that Bai Shang was the earth demon who hated the human race and had just killed Wang Jinlin. He had brought Wei Feng here because her blood essence was special. Then what about them? A wisp of soul thought came from the white-robed state teacher. The dark realm Azura's remnant soul needs the souls of many dead. The reason you are still alive is because the dark realm Azura's remnant soul hasn't broken free from his eyeball. Yang Inquan looked over in shock. Dressed in white robes, Zhou Songmin charged into the purple satin floating in the air to find Shen Feiqing, who was hiding inside it, despite the blazing pillar of soul light. His last piece of advice from his conscience before he went in was to be on guard. Leave this place immediately. Yang Inquan didn't dare to hesitate after hearing the news. He roared and urged Li Yuchan, as long as you can prove that your sister's actions have nothing to do with the Li family will be able to escape and survive. Li Yuchan was at a loss. He didn't know what to do. The Silver Moon Empire cannot die. Yuan Lianyao shouted. The others all tried to persuade Li Yuchan. The Wind Cloud Sail's hub was only in the hands of the Li family. Every time the Wind Cloud Sail went out, there had to be a Li family member guarding it. Otherwise, the Empress would not be at ease. Li Yuangui was dead, and only Li Yuchan could control the Wind Cloud Sail. She was also the Empress' younger sister. I understand. After hesitating for a few seconds, Li Yuchan nodded slightly and moved to a corner of the sail. She used a secret art to affect the rudder and make the Wind Cloud Sail move again. Where are we going? She asked. To the Divine Might Empire. Since your sister is with Bai Shang, she must have other arrangements in the direction of the Silver Moon Empire. Yang Inquan shouted. Oh, Li Yuchan agreed. Boom. Streaks of glittering rainbow light suddenly gushed out from below and crashed into the Wind Cloud Sail that had just flown a short distance away. This Wind Cloud Sail that the Silver Moon Empire had spent a lot of money to build followed in the footsteps of the gilded treasure ship. In an instant it swayed and sank. Inside the Wind Cloud Sail, everyone was screaming and cursing. On the hard ground of the dense forest, there were several ballistae that had been set up on the gilded treasure ship. After the gilded treasure ship had crashed, these ballistae had been collected and hidden in the depths of the forest. They were pointed at the Wind Cloud Sail from afar and attacked it fiercely as it flew. Wei Wujiang, who was from the Divine Might Empire's Wei clan and had been accepted as a personal disciple by the Lightning Sect's sect master, had his neck held by Li Baixiong. This young man, who had always thought of himself as a respectable and arrogant person, was now pale and had blood at the corner of his mouth. Li Baixiong of the Black Fiend army pressed his head against a ballista and forced him to fill it with spirit stones to bombard the Wind Cloud Sail. If he dared to mutter a word, Li Baixiong slapped him so hard that even the cartilage of his cheeks cracked. The surrounding Black Fiend army officers who didn't have a good impression of the Divine Might Empire and the Wei clan were filled with killing intent. Their eyes under their masks flashed with the cruelty of wild beasts. The commander has given a secret order to kill everyone in the Wind Cloud Sail, regardless of gender or sect. Li Baixiong suddenly waved his hand and chopped Wei Wujiang's neck like a sharp blade. Wei Wujiang, who had lost his value, was beheaded. After this battle, the commander will be able to become a god. If he has a Yang spirit cultivation base, with his great talent, he will definitely be able to wash away the humiliation and make the Divine Might Empire and the Ancient Baron sect pay the price. Many Black Fiend army officers and soldiers responded loudly, their blood boiling. They, who believed in Shen Feiqing as a god, only listened to her. If she wanted them to live, they would live. If she wanted them to die, they wouldn't hesitate for a moment. They would gladly die. At Li Baixiong's command, they rode on their Black Fiend beasts and began to chase after the remaining people in the Wind Cloud Sail. They didn't ask for reasons, nor did they distinguish between good and evil. Chapter 337. Yu Yuan no longer cared about the battle around him. Su Zixi and the white-haired old woman, Yan Qiling and Bai Shang, Zhou Tsangmin and Xin Feiqing. He no longer cared about the fierce battle between the three sides, and even Wang Jinlin's death. His finger, which had touched the brown eyeball of the dark domain Azura, was covered in a layer of blue frost. The blue frost was the cold current in the eyeball, which was cold, silent, and dark. It flowed out from the eyeball, causing his finger to freeze and numb his touch. In fact, he almost couldn't feel the existence of his palm. He didn't feel that his hand was still his. He was about to lose the touch of his hand. Drop by drop, the blood that seeped out of his cracked flesh turned into blood crystals because of the cold air. The sword light that was constantly gathering and flying along the meridians toward the eyeball of the dark domain Azura contained the fierce space power. Because of the blockage of the meridians, it was blocked by the cold current. Invisible to the naked eye, but Tianhun could see in the depths of the palm bone, two kinds of power were crazily colliding. One kind of power came from the brown eyeball, which was blue and icy. The other kind of power came from the sword light of the arm bone. It carried the space power and the extremely refined sharp sword intent. This kind of power was like crimson crystal threads. Tianhun sensed that there were millions of different kinds of power, densely packed. And that palm of his was the main battlefield of the battle. The sword light and the refined sword intent that contained the space power could not penetrate the brown eyeball again. Instead, his palm was the new battlefield. Based on the current situation, the dark domain Azura should have the upper hand with the power accumulated in the eyeball. The power of the dark domain Azura seeped out of the eyeball and into his palm. And, step by step, it was going to nibble up the meridians of his arm bone. Once his palm fell, the dark blue evil power of the dark domain Azura would be able to go up and invade his forearm, and then his upper arm. It was possible that before the sword spirit completely recovered, before he could swing his sword, he would die first. And the sword spirit that was born because of him and attached to his arm bone would also disappear from the world. The dark realm Azura would reappear in the world and regain his full strength. The desolate abandoned grounds, the Silver Moon Empire, the Divine Might Empire, and even the Qian Xian continent could all be baptized in blood by this Azura of the Dark Realm. He could ignore the people of the world and the mortals of the two nations, but there were still many close friends and family that were close to him in this life who were about to die. More importantly, the spirit that he had painstakingly regenerated was about to explode. "Are you there?" Seeing that the flesh on his arm was torn apart and that his palm was covered in deep blue frost and had lost all sense of touch, Yu Yuan focused on calling out to the sword soul that had once resonated with him within the interweaving sword lights. With his heavenly soul, he seemed to be able to see mottled spots of light shining like stars within the sword lights. The dazzling light spots were the remnants of the sword soul's soul. When it was dormant, it would scatter and gather at a specific time. Slowly, the ancient, vast, and boundless aura gathered from the many dazzling light spots and quietly condensed. He knew that the sword soul was already there. Otherwise, the identity of the white-haired old woman as a demonic snake wouldn't suddenly be reflected in his earth soul and become a deep memory. However, the speed at which the sword soul completely awakened was still too slow. He was afraid that he couldn't wait. Rip, rip, rip. The flesh on his bare arm seemed to have been forcefully torn apart. It was so deep that his bones could be seen. The bones were as bright as red crystals, shining with dazzling divine light, flowing with brilliant colors. Unfortunately, even the numerous bones and the thickened tendons that connected the bones were on the verge of being unable to endure the terrifying sword insight at this moment, and they were on the verge of splitting apart. Once the tendons split open and the bones shattered, he would no longer be able to swing his sword. If he died this time, his three souls would turn to ashes and he wouldn't even have the chance to regenerate. He didn't want to die, so he was very anxious and thought about how to resolve this and survive this calamity. Drip. Suddenly, a bright silver pearl of light fell from the sky. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that the pearl of light was a silver ball of blood that contained rich dragon aura. Dragon blood. By Shuang's dragon blood from the silver frost azure dragon. Looking up, he saw the floating island floating in the air right above him. Many knotted dragon tendons were tied to the floating island. Beneath the island was Bai Shuang's dragon flesh and blood. The inside of the island was refined from Bai Shuang's dragon bone fragments. As for the drops of shining silver pearls, they were the blood essence of Bai Shuang's dead dragons. When a drop of dragon blood essence fell on his fleshless arm, it suddenly released an enormous amount of flesh and blood essence. Yu Yuan's arm suddenly grew flesh and bone. The tendons that were about to split open became tough and elastic again, wrapped by new flesh and blood. Drip, drip. Even more dragon blood fell from the floating island and landed on Yu Yuan's hand, as if it had eyes of its own. Every drop of dragon blood contained not only Bai Shuang's refined dragon aura and flesh aura, but also a wisp of the unusual power Yutu had refined from the barren abandoned land, which seemed to have the miraculous effect of reviving the dead and growing flesh and bone. Then, because of the drop of dragon blood, Yu Yuan's arm, which couldn't bear the heavy burden, didn't explode. In a place where he couldn't see, Yutu's hazy figure was shrouded in a multicolored miasma. Yutu sat on the floating island. Wisps of mist condensed from all over her body and fused into the floating island under her, where the 7th grade silver frost azure dragon's blood essence that she hadn't refined yet dripped onto Yu Yuan's arm, along with the power granted to her by the blood essence. No one knew how strenuous and painful it was for her to do this. Bai Shuang's dragon blood only contained immense flesh aura power and frost power. She had to strip the frost power from it, extract only the flesh aura power from it, and infuse it with a wisp of her heart's blood. Only at the cost of her own injuries would she be able to give those drops of dragon blood the miraculous effect of reviving flesh and bone. Bai Shuang's dragon blood alone, without her additional support, would only worsen Yu Yuan's injuries, resulting in the opposite effect. The burning sun was no longer scorching. High in the sky, Luing from the star moon sect stared nervously at a sparkling stone that was as large as a mirror and saw what was happening in it. She saw Li Baixiong killing Wei Wujiang and fleeing nobles of the Silver Moon Empire after the wind cloud sail fell. She also saw Li Baixiong commanding his black-armored soldiers to chase after the cultivators from different sects and clans who had fallen from the wind cloud sail. She didn't hear the soul voice the white-robed Grand Tutor had sent to Yang Yinquan, so she didn't know what Li Baixiong was doing. As the scene changed, her expression flickered slightly. She saw that Yu Yuan's arm was torn open, revealing bones that shone with sparkling light. Thick veins could be seen clearly. Then, she saw a drop of silver blood fall, and Yu Yuan's veins that were about to break were instantly wrapped in new flesh and blood. Following the falling blood, she saw Yu Zhu, who was casting her spell with all her might, but couldn't cover the floating island. Shrouded in the miasma, Yu Zhu's dark and skinny body seemed to be in great pain, and was on the verge of collapsing. Wisps of blood flowed out of the natural armor on her chest and seeped into the dragon blood that she had refined. As soon as her heart blood made contact with the dragon blood, she shuddered in pain. The process of wiping out the frost power in the dragon blood with her own blood and leaving only the essence of the dragon blood was as painful as cutting her bones and flesh. She was sweating all over, and her eyes and face were filled with pain. Even so, she persisted to refine drops of dragon blood and sprinkle them on Yu Yuan's arm, helping Yu Yuan regrow his flesh and keep the awakening of his sword soul uninterrupted. Through her meteor eyes, Luing was able to see her every move. She watched as she sacrificed herself to help Yu Yuan. Luing was deeply moved. Not all outsiders were ruthless and bloodthirsty. Yu Zhu, who had left a very bad impression on her at first, had remained unmoved by Bai Shuang's bewitchment. When Yu Yuan was on the verge of collapsing, She had gone all out to protect him at the cost of her cultivation base. Wasn't he right in front of her? From the look of it, she was determined to protect Yu Yuan even if she had to die. Yu Yuan, who had withstood Azura's counterattack with his sword soul and sword intent left by the moon-severing realm expert, was enduring great pain at this moment. However, she was suffering even greater pain because of Yu Yuan. Chapter 338. A figure that shouldn't have appeared quietly appeared on the floating island. It was a tall general with a full beard and wearing chainmail. He was Fan Yen of the Fan family. Lu Ying, who had been observing Yu Zhu's actions on the floating island through her meteor eyes, was surprised. She had seen the wind cloud sail through her meteor eyes when they were on the gilded treasure ship. She had clearly seen when Li Yuangue discovered Yu Yuan's group and brought Yu Yuan's group into the wind cloud sail. She vaguely remembered that when Yu Yuan's group landed on the wind cloud sail, they were pushed by that man called Fan Yen. He was pushed in the direction of Earth Demon Bai Shang, who was fighting with Yen Qiling. However, Bai Shang hadn't revealed his identity at that time, and he still looked like a poor man. However, Bai Shang had changed from his usual indifference and numbness, and he had gotten into an argument with Fan Yen. When Bai Shang no longer concealed himself and returned to the wind cloud sail to capture Wei Fengxing, Fan Yen had shrunk into the crowd, not daring to meet Bai Shang's eyes. Later, the white-robed state teacher had pierced through Li Yuangue's Naiwan acupoint and killed that old general. After learning of Earth Demon Bai Shang's identity, Yang Yinquan of the Taiyuan sect had blamed the Silver Moon Empire. Fan Yen had jumped out again, saying that it was only the Empire's Li family and that it was the Empress' decision. When Li Baixiong ordered Wei Wujiang to shoot down the wind cloud sail with the ballista, and the Empire's nobles had scattered, Lu Ying no longer paid attention to this person. Who would have thought that Fan Yen, who had been hostile to Yu Yuan from the beginning, who had clashed with Bai Shang, and who had blamed the Empress for everything as soon as he saw that the situation was not going well, had actually come to the floating island without realizing it. This muscular man was at the middle stage of the subtle realm, and he wore a chainmail that shone brightly under the sunlight. It was obvious that he wasn't an ordinary item. This general of the Fan family, who had a bad temper and was like a barrel of gunpowder, was currently standing on the floating island with an aura as calm as a mountain. It was completely different from what he had shown before. Suppressing his flesh aura and spiritual power, Fan Yen stood on his tiptoes and approached Yu Zhu like a ghost. A bright yellow octagonal hammer was suddenly swung out by Fan Yen. Under the sunlight, the head of the bright yellow octagonal hammer suddenly became as large as a millstone. An explosive aura seemed to be about to explode from the head of the hammer. The bright yellow octagonal hammer smashed towards Yu Zhu's head. It was like a mountain crashing down. Pung! Yu Tu shook violently as emerald light fragments sputtered from the top of her head. While she was trembling, the flesh at the corner of her mouth and forehead split open, and green blood that was different from that of mortals flowed out. Yu Tu let out a muffled groan in pain. She had extracted the blood from her heart and risked her cultivation to help Yu Yuan overcome the difficulty of refining the dragon blood. But now she was forced to stop. She, who had been ambushed by a sneak attack, was even more injured. While she was in severe pain, she was still a little confused. How could she have been ambushed in the wasteland and on her floating island? She abruptly turned around and looked at the uninvited guest. Her emerald eyes shone with a dim light. Fan Yen, who had failed to kill Yu Zhu with his hammer, didn't seem surprised, as if he had expected this. The bearded warrior, who was wearing a chain armor, said with a calm face, "You should have listened to Mr. Bai's advice." A hint of mockery could be seen in Yu Zhu's eyes. It was as if she was mocking Fan Yen, who was only at the subtle realm, for daring to come here and seek his own death. However, just as she was about to transform into her true form and kill Fan Yen, she, who was connected to Yu Yuan's mind, suddenly had a bad feeling. She exhaled a mouthful of miasma. The miasma was mixed with more than a dozen kinds of deadly poisons, which she had refined into her body and used to kill her enemies. As the miasma flew towards Fan Yen, she calmed herself down again and pointed her finger at the natural armor on her chest. Then, she drew a wisp of refined blood from a gap in it and fused it with the dragon blood on the floating island under her. Enduring the heart-wrenching pain, she ignored Fan Yen, who was like a clown, and continued to refine the dragon blood to help Yu Yuan. She knew that Yu Yuan couldn't live without her at this moment. Ha ha! Fan Yen opened his mouth and let out a strange smile. Holding the octagonal hammer, he fearlessly passed through the miasma. Inside the chainmail, there were many exquisite patterns that were secretly operating. As the more than a dozen kinds of poisons in the miasma approached, they were blocked by the bright light released by the chain armor, so Fan Yen wasn't affected at all. Once again, he wielded the octagonal hammer and smashed it towards Yu Zhu as if he were hammering a weapon. Bang! Bang! He hammered again and again. Even though Yushu's life rating and grade were much higher than Fan Yan's, being hammered like this over and over again, and having to drain his heart blood to refine drops of dragon blood, he suffered unspeakable pain. Yu Zhu's head and face were covered in dirty blood, which made her face, which wasn't pretty in the first place, look even scarier. Even her skull, which was as hard as iron, started to crack under the repeated heavy blows from the octagonal hammer. Just as Fan Yen swung his hammer at her again, a streak of dazzling starlight suddenly pierced through the sunset glow and poured down with a loud rumble. The dazzling streak of starlight bombarded Fan Yan's muscular body, causing his skin to split open and his flesh to be torn open. A figure, whose acupoints shone with starlight, descended by the streak of starlight. Looking at Fan Yen in front of her, she said with a frosty face, "You despicable dog!" Fan Yen suddenly came to a stop. He took a deep look at Lu Ying and said, "You'd better hide in the falling star's eye and mind your own business." Lu Ying's pretty face was as cold as ice. After observing for a while, she was filled with anger at this moment. She felt that this man named Fan Yen was indeed a vicious man who was best at concealing himself. His despicableness disgusted her to the core. No matter how stupid she was, after watching for so long, she had already sorted out the situation. This was the only person Bai Shang had a dispute with, and Li Yuangui didn't seem to like him either. At a critical moment, he had even dared to criticize the Silver Moon Queen and the Li family's Fan Yen. He was simply jackals of the same lair as Bai Shang and Li Yuangui. If Bai Shang and Li Yuangui were famous chess pieces, then he was a hidden chess piece that hid even deeper and was even harder to discover. If it weren't for the fact that Yu Zhu's dragon blood had been of great help to Yu Yuan and could influence the outcome of this fierce battle, this man named Fan Yen might still be hiding in the dark. Yang Yinquan, Su Xiangtian, Yuan Lianyao, and the others might have been plotted against by him at some point. If Fan Yan's surname was Fan, and he had sworn loyalty to the Silver Moon Queen, then the Fan family of the Silver Moon Empire might have known the truth and stood by the Empress' side since a long time ago. Perhaps it was the Fan family's or Fan Yan's unilateral decision. "Keep casting your spell. Leave this man to me." With these words, Lu Ying took a deep breath and activated all of the star energy in her acupoint. The strange garments she was wearing instantly morphed into a vast sea of stars. Countless fragmentary stars flickered inside her garments, rapidly changing their positions. Fan Yan's expression flickered as he saw this. "Are you going to fight me to the death? As far as I know, you're the chosen one of the Star Luna sect, but you've never fought anyone to the death." Lu Ying said calmly, "The past is the past, and the present is the present." In the crater in the dilapidated city, Yu Yuan stared at the arm, which was now covered in sparkling silver dragon blood. Flesh and blood were now growing on the arm, covering the tendons, veins, and bones. He could sense with great clarity that the new flesh and blood contained an extremely rich flesh aura. Thanks to the sword light and the flow of spatial power, his meridians seemed to have been tempered and cleansed again. His bones were as hard as divine iron in the starry river. He knew that the reason he was still alive and didn't explode and die was because of Yu Zhu, who was on the floating island above his head. However, he didn't know what Yu Zhu was enduring for him at this moment. He watched as the hand that was pointing at the brown eyeball was engulfed by the strange blue, icy power. It had already seeped into his forearm and shifted the battlefield to his forearm. In his anxiety, he called out softly in his mind. A long time passed. I'm here. An indescribable soul will that only he could hear and sense suddenly appeared in his heart and soul sea. His eyes suddenly shone as brightly as diamonds. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.